Inside what appears to be a blacksmith shop, a fire is roaring inside the forge. A blond man looks down, drooling, with a lustful expression on his face. He is holding a sword, hot, as if it just came out of the fire. Then, the man's expression changes to one of absolute madness. He opens his mouth and raises the sword higher up. He then bites down on the sword so hard that it breaks through the metal. Next, a father and his son stand before a giant portrait of someone, with the father telling his son, Arhan, a story he must hear, since he is a member of the Karavan family. The same story he had always heard from his father when he was young. He places his hand on Arhan's, and looking at a sword, he tells him that even if now they are living in this small village far from the capital, 200 years ago, their family's status was unmatched by any other. They had a knight, called the God of War, and righteous supervisors favored by the king and respected by everyone. Their family was chosen by the sword, and they produced swordmasters for generations. That is why everyone treated them with respect. They even named them the Invincible Protectors, Karavan. The father then places his hand on Arhan's shoulder and tells him that one day he will inherit his position and become the head of the Karavan family. This is why he must always live with the pride of the Karavan family flowing through his veins, to regain the family's glory and stand tall once more as the protector of this land. That is the duty that the caravans must undertake. Next, the village can be seen from a wheat field. Arhan, all grown up now, while cutting some wheat with a scythe, thinks that the heroic tales of their family that his father used to tell him are probably just tall tales. He thinks that disgraced nobles clinging to their past glory is a pretty common thing. If the stories about Karavan were true, they wouldn't be living in this poor village as landlords. They wouldn't be spending time doing farm work with the tenants every day, he thinks, as he asks a commoner where to leave a stack of wheat. He then places it inside a carriage. While he's sweating, he also thinks there are so many holes in his father's story. The family's founder, the idolized figure in the portrait, would be one. No matter how much he looks at him, he doesn't resemble his father at all. Even the sword that's been passed down the family, it's way too sharp and intact for something made hundreds of years ago. And most damningly, not a single history book in the kingdom mentions the name of their alleged ancestor, Liam Karavan. In all his studies, Arhan couldn't find it even once. Considering all of that, there must only be one conclusion. They must be just tales, made up to give their descendants something to be proud of. Suddenly, a man calls out to Arhan, asking what he is doing standing there, zoning out. He calls for Arhan, saying it's time for their snack break, and another one tells him that if he doesn't hurry, all the warm bread will be gone. Joking, the older man tells him that if he comes later, he will eat it all, and Arhan tells him to wait and save some for him. After that, it seems that the old man starts coughing because of the laughter, while his wife smacks him on the back to help him. Even so, Arhan doesn't care that Karavan isn't a great family. He starts running towards the man, and says that in the end, everyone here welcomes him, and he loves this place where he can live with them. This is the Karavan he wants, just as it is now. Unfortunately, it looks like things aren't going the way we want most of the time. This was what Arhan thought he wanted, in his peaceful, complacent state. At the end of the day, Arhan gets on his horse and tells his subordinates that it looks like he has harvested enough for today, so he is going to the market in the neighboring town. He then tells them that he was thinking about picking up whatever they need while he is there. He then asks the younger man if Kun would want some apples, as he has been grumbling about not seeing any fruit for a while, and the man tells Arhan that it would be great if he could get some. Arhan then tells the woman that Marino's youngest daughter's birthday is coming up soon, so he will buy her a pretty doll if he sees one, and Marino asks him how he knew about that. Looking grateful, Arhan smiles, winks, and tells her that he knows everything. After all, he's going to be the next lord of that place. He then leaves, waving to the people, and they wave back, wishing Arhan a safe trip. He is loved among the people of the village. Left alone, the villagers start chatting, with the young man saying there is no one like their young master, and the older man telling him he is right, and that Arhan is so different from the other nobles. The young man then says that they should try to finish the rest of the work before it's too late. Just as he wants to say something about having a regular meeting with someone, blood splatters from a scratch that appeared out of nowhere on his face. In reality, it looks like someone has cut his head in half, clean off. Seeing this, the older woman is speechless. Just when his blood stains her face and clothes, she realizes. Then, more blood splatters to the ground. A man with long white hair and a golden sword says that this land must be erased. Two of the other villagers, petrified and sweating, can only look at the man. One of them manages to ask who he is. However, he just goes past them without saying anything. He simply keeps repeating what he said earlier, but it looks like the other villagers haven't escaped his wrath either. It didn't look like he even moved a muscle, but it's clear he was responsible for this. He then continues his walk towards the village. Later that night, Arhan returns, and when he sees the scene, he drops all the fruits and the toys. He starts crying, denying what is happening. He stands before the sea of corpses, asking what happened, asking why everyone is dead, as one man comes from behind, trying to grab him. In reality, he actually tries to cover his eyes, telling him not to look. This is Arhan's butler. Arhan starts saying that something must be wrong, as he is seeing things, and his butler is crying. He then starts explaining to Arhan what happened, how that man came, and said that the land of Karavan must be erased. It only took him 10 minutes. He wielded his sword with cold indifference. This man appeared without warning, and took the lives of half the villagers. Then, it looks like he also destroyed the village entirely. As he demolished everything, the man said that he was just following orders. Just like that, Butler says, half of Karavan fell and was erased, leaving no trace, all done by a single disaster, one lone swordmaster. Later, it looks like we are back at the estate. Inside, everyone has been murdered. Only Butler and Arhan remain standing, walking through a sea of corpses. Amidst the terrible, unexpected disaster, Arhan can only look at the bodies of his fallen friends. Eventually he sees something, scarring him. He sees a body without a head, blood splattered everywhere on the ground. With this, Arhan can't hold it back anymore and starts crying. Then, someone calls his name. It appears that his mother was the only one able to survive this massacre. A single glimpse of hope. She jumps into Arhan's arms, hugging him tight. Seeing that Arhan is safe, the woman starts crying, saying she is so happy to see him. Hearing this, Arhan clenches tighter as well. In that moment, the warmth of his mother's embrace brought a fleeting sense of relief. But then, Arhan realized the horrible truth. Behind his mother, Arhan can see his father. He is down on his knees, crying tears of blood, continuously asking himself why. But the truth of the matter is, the tragedy had only begun. It looks like, for some reason, the swordmaster who wiped out half of the Karavan territory in an instant didn't harm Arhan's parents, and only conveyed the following words instead. The man stated that he will be returning in a month. If they wish to leave, they should leave that place, and take everyone they care about with them. Arhan's father kept asking the same question, with tears flowing down his cheeks. He asks the swordmaster why them, what crime have they committed? However, the man does not care about such things. He turns his back, and without even turning his gaze, he says that he is simply following orders. After he left behind his incomprehensible words, one by one, the surviving villagers began to leave the village, taking whatever possessions they could. That might have been the only way to save lives, but their family wasn't even given that choice. Arhan's father was crushed by the weight of his responsibility and started reciting rubbish from some books, saying he was the great knight who hunts nightmares, the iron-blooded guardian who protects the kingdom. It was his solemn duty to behead the great evil that would soon come, and he swore to the heavens he would never yield. His helplessness as the Lord made it even harder for him to take any action. Later, Arhan's mother calls his name. She places her hands on Arhan's shoulders and tells him that he has instructed the butler to prepare a carriage. Arhan is to leave the territory with him and go as far away as possible. Hearing this, Arhan asks his mother what she is saying, as she and his father must also leave. His mother then explains that his father cannot leave this place, because until the very end, he will want to face the enemy as the Lord of Karavan, and as his partner, his mother says that he will be with him until the very end. Hearing this, Arhan starts crying, begging his mother to take his father and leave with him, but his mother has something else to say. The stories his father told him are not true. All of those tales of a righteous guardian, an invincible protector, all of those are nothing more than history filled with lies. Therefore, his mother only asks for one last promise. She asks Arhan to swear that he will never pick up a sword in his life, and that he will survive no matter what. Whatever happens, Arhan must live for himself. The butler then calls for his mother, saying that the carriage is ready. She asks the butler to take good care of Arhan, and make sure they get as far away as possible before that man comes. The butler complies, and with tears in his eyes he pulls Arhan away, while he screams for his mother. With quiet dignity, his mother closes her eyes and bows her head slightly. While this happens, the butler pulls Arhan away, saying that they must go as fast as possible. Arhan still tries to reach for his mother as he is being pulled away. With tears filling her eyes, looking after her son, she reiterates her love for Arhan. Back at the estate, a door opens slightly. Inside, Arhan's father is smashing his head against a bookshelf. Books are all over the floor. Blood has started flowing off his forehead, and drool can be seen falling from his mouth. Arhan's mother hugs him from behind and tells him not to suffer alone. If nothing else works out, she tells him that at least until the end, she will be at his side. Inside the forest, the butler is driving the carriage. He tells Arhan that even though he knows this is incredibly painful and devastating, he still must endure. He tells Arhan that the man who did this is a calamity, a natural disaster that humans like them cannot possibly overcome. They must accept this tragedy for what it is, and forget it if they want to go on living. He then turns his head and says that this would be the wish of his lord and lady. He wants to look Arhan in the eyes and tell him that he can still live on. When he notices that Arhan is not even in the carriage anymore, it looks like Arhan is running through the forest. No matter how he thinks about it, he cannot leave his own. How could he leave his parents like this? He cannot just run away by himself. Arhan thinks that they call him a calamity, but the swordmaster is still just a man, and just like him, he will die if an arrow pierces his heart. Arhan reveals that he has spent the last month preparing a deadly poison, so if he can shoot him with this, it will all be over. He will be able to protect them, he says, as he arrives back at the estate. Looking above, he remains stunned. Pure fear grips his heart. His father's head hangs tied to a spike. More specifically, it hangs from the flag on the tower of the estate. Sensing Arhan's presence, the swordmaster calls him a fool. Looking back, he asks Arhan if he has come to embrace his death after all. The swordmaster says that he has shown Arhan mercy, yet it looks like he doesn't want it. Arhan wants to say something, but words are not coming out. Torn between his father's head on a spike and his dead mother at his feet, he is speechless. He then goes mad with rage and pulls out the crossbow he's been carrying, screaming that he will kill the man. Just as he says this, the man remains completely still, unbothered by Arhan's declaration. However, Arhan doesn't even manage to shoot his crossbow. He stands before the man, and the difference in power is obvious. Arhan drops the crossbow, and as it touches the ground, the arrow flies away. He falls to his knees, and the swordmaster approaches. Arhan grabs his neck, unable to breathe. As he walks towards Arhan, the swordmaster says that he is not even 18 yet. He walks past him and tells Arhan to consider himself lucky, as he won't take his life today, so he can go and drown in his despair. He then tells Arhan that not a single trace of Karavan's will can remain on this continent, and if he dares to continue that bloodline, he will find them again and kill every single one of them. Karavan's fate should be to simply disappear like this. After the swordmaster leaves, Arhan manages to pull himself up from the ground. He takes his mother's corpse into his arms, calling himself utterly pathetic. Without being able to do anything, that was the day Arhan lost everything, or at least, so he thought. The ancestral sword in his home seems to be imbued with a powerful force. As Arhan looks up at it, the sword commands him to show some respect. A figure starts appearing before the painting of his ancestor. It's no one else but Liam Karavan, the one his father told him so many stories about, and he calls Arhan his descendant. A year has passed since that horrible event, and since Arhan buried them all on one corner of the estate. In that time, he prepared for his revenge. The pinnacle, currently hailed as the strongest sword on the continent, is a guardian who protects the kingdom's peace, a righteous sentinel who eradicates evil, a superhuman with the most brilliant talent, even among swordmasters. Carlos, wielder of the 10 swords, was the name of the man who took everything from Arhan. After that, everything became a question. Why did he kill his family? Who was behind this? What secrets does Karavan even hold? However, for Arhan, one thing is clear. The lives of all Karavan members who died in vain will never return. Looking at the sword on the wall, Arhan realizes there is still more to the story. Seeing the light emanate from the sword, he wonders if all these unsolved mysteries have driven him to madness. That is when Arhan finally sees it. The mana emanated by the sword. Liam Karavan appears before him, calling Arhan by name. Before seeing Liam, Arhan thought it was all a lie, but there he was, his ancestor from all the legends his father had told him about. As the rain droplets furiously strike the ground, Arhan realizes that he has heard about something like this before. For some reason, those who've suffered a severe mental shock often experience hallucinations. However, Arhan can't simply dismiss what's in front of him. Liam then tells Arhan that he senses him wavering. Looking down on Arhan, Liam asks him if he is afraid he has truly gone mad, or maybe it's the fact that an ancestor he dismissed as fantasy has appeared before him, leaving him utterly stunned. Arhan speaks to the figure, saying that if this situation isn't an illusion, but reality, he asks Liam if he truly is the founder of their family, the strongest swordmaster in history, Liam Karavan, that is. If he really is the person from his father's heroic tales, he asks Liam why he is only appearing before him now. He starts screaming at Liam, asking why now? Why? After all this time? Liam, however, stands unbothered. Liam tells Arhan that he first needs to test him. He tells Arhan that revenge is an ordeal that shouldn't be started unless he's prepared to give up everything. And so, for the past year, he's been watching him every single day. Despite his pathetic, hopeless talent, which Arhan himself must recognize, his obsession to never let go of his sword, not even for a single day, and never, not even for a moment, has his faith wavered. Liam reiterates Arhan's question, why he's only appeared now, and says that the answer to that is simple. Liam has only appeared now because the hatred in his eyes has finally reached the depth he desired, but also because his own patience has reached its limit. The murderous intent within him wants to tear the one who brutally slaughtered his descendants and the people of his land to pieces. Throughout the history of this continent, there is a fact that has never been disproven. Only a swordmaster can kill another swordmaster. Liam extends his arm to Arhan and tells him that he knows this well, which is why he swings his sword with such stubbornness, vowing revenge, no doubt. But if he is going to do it on his own, Arhan could train for a lifetime and never reach him. A swordmaster is a transcendental existence, beyond the limits of humanity, a level of skill that even so-called geniuses can never hope to reach. And even among swordmasters, that man is a transcended being who stands far above the rest. Even in his time, Liam says, during the age of war, there were only a handful of warriors as skilled as he. No one in this generation can kill him, and as time passes, he will become even greater. Hearing this, Arhan thinks that he already knew full well how vast the gap between them is, but what Liam is saying is that it's beyond difficult, that it could be impossible. He cannot just stand by and watch the bastard who took everything from him become a hero. But from this moment on, Liam says that things will be different. That is because Liam is going to help him, so that he can become a sharper and stronger swordsman than him. And as a member of the Karavan family, Arhan has the authority to judge that murderer. There is only one path that a caravan can take. Liam tells Arhan to eat his sword, calling him a descendant of the steel-blooded. Inside the forge, the sparks from the fire reach the wall where spears are posted. Arhan has placed the sword inside the fire, heating it up. The caravan bloodline is a mix of human and dwarven blood. Looking down at the sword, Arhan already knew what he must do. The heated metal calls for him. Liam tells Arhan that it all began with him, a half-dwarf. The physical traits of the dwarves may not be apparent, but within their blood is a special ability that is passed down to their descendants. The ability is the power to consume swords. By doing so, Arhan can make the memories and skills of the wielder his own. This is how the Karavan family has produced swordmasters for generations. The source of their power made them such a great family. Arhan thinks about everything Liam told him, how he can inherit power by devouring swords. It is well known that dwarves are friends of iron and fire, but he's never heard of such a bizarre ability. For Arhan, it all seems so absurd, and all these stories are confusing him further. However, he thinks, the truth can only be proven by results, and he doesn't have the luxury to hesitate. He turns towards Liam and asks him how he can consume the sword. Hearing this, Liam smiles. He tells Arhan that the method is simple. He just needs to heat the sword until the blade is soft enough. Then, Arhan must swallow it. Looking down at the blazing metal, Arhan thinks that maybe he is trapped in a nightmare, or maybe he's gone mad. Maybe he is being led astray by a mere phantom, but even so, if there's even a sliver of a chance, he will do it. Then he prepares to bite down on the sword, and so he does, making it shatter into pieces. The fire consumes him. This is a painful process. Arhan screams in pain. He then drops what is remaining of the sword. He grabs his neck as he is trying to swallow the hot metal. Then he falls to the ground. But this is not the end. The pain continues, but Arhan is not going to let himself be consumed by it. He instead remembers why he is going through this pain. Then he reaches for the sword again. He picks it up and takes another bite. As he swallows the sword, he says that whatever happens, whatever the cost, he will become a swordmaster. He will do everything necessary to kill that man. The next day, the sun seems to be shining across the land. Inside the blacksmith shop, a scream can be heard from Arhan. Waking up on the floor, he cannot believe he is still alive. Not only that, but he doesn't even have a single wound. He can still vividly recall the pain of chewing and swallowing that sword. Arhan says that he almost thought yesterday was a dream. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the case. If it had been, there would be no reason for only the hilt of the sword to be left. Arhan can then hear Liam's voice telling him that, at least, his mental fortitude is commendable. Unlike his hopelessly weak body, that is. Liam tells him that even among Arhan's ancestors, some couldn't withstand the searing pain, and more than a few gave up. Liam asks Arhan if he believes his story now, and tells him that all the legends about the caravans his father told him are true. Therefore, Liam is not just a mere hallucination of his. Arhan then kneels before Liam. He salutes him and says that he greets the progenitor. Liam then tells Arhan to call him master. All those who have received his teachings have done so before, and Liam says he understands. Arhan then asks Liam if all is true. Does that also mean he inherited Liam's great power? Last night, Liam mentioned that he could gain power simply by consuming swords. However, he doesn't feel like much has changed. Liam then tells him that it appears there has been a bit of a problem. To be precise, it's more of a problem on Arhan's side, not his. Hearing this, Arhan asks Liam what he means by that. Liam says that his original plan was to have Arhan eat his beloved sword and raise him to the level of a swordmaster. However, perhaps it's because his blood has thinned over the generations, and while Arhan still inherited the ability to consume swords, the ability to digest a sword's power contained within seems to have weakened considerably. To put it plainly, Liam says, in his current state, it's going to be impossible for Arhan to fully digest the essence of Liam's sword. Hearing this, Arhan remains speechless. Still, he remains kneeling before Liam. He then says he understands. Arhan tells Liam that if he says this is the case, then it must be true, and Liam asks if this is all Arhan has to say. Arhan tells Liam that he was already aware of his body's weakness. Although he is disappointed with the results, he is simply grateful that another path remains for him, and Liam asks him what he means by that. Arhan explains his understanding of Liam's words, how he said that it was impossible for him in his current state, meaning that someday he will be able to handle his power. In other words, he should start with a sword he can handle. Therefore, that only means he needs to find one. Hearing this, Liam finds it interesting. He then tells Arhan that he already has the intuition of a swordmaster. Liam then tells Arhan that the more worn out and handled the sword, the better. Liam then tells Arhan to guide him to an area where old, shabby weapons are abundant. There, Liam will pick one for Arhan. Amidst a place full of rubble, Liam says that the place is gloomy, and that the necromancers would love it. Arhan tells Liam that all the old things from the slums are gathered there, from worthless scrap metal to unusable weapons. Arhan says that there is no more suitable place than this to seek a sword that meets Liam's conditions, and Liam says that it's a good start. He then tells Arhan that in the beginning, he too used to devour swords in places where the smell of blood was thick, swords clutched by dead soldiers, axes caked in mud and blood, spears with broken shafts rolling on the ground, and so on. With all his might, Liam ate and ate, all to grow stronger, and thus, survive. Somehow, this place reminds him of those times. To guard the sparks of life, they've clashed without end while increasingly getting fractured. Some died the same day, others lived to see tomorrow. Those days themselves were a battlefield. In the midst of those struggles, countless lives are inevitably extinguished without a trace, and yet a select few leave behind a dazzling single point of light. Liam then tells Arhan that he has found it. He points towards a sword and tells Arhan to take it. He tells Arhan that this is the sword he must devour next. 1 month later, it looks like some men have come to Arhan's estate, thinking that it's abandoned, saying that there is not a single person living there, or in the village. The men are walking the halls, saying that maybe a warlock used this mansion to experiment on living beings before, but his friend says he doubts it. As if that were the case, they would have died the moment they've stepped foot in this place. Most likely, another one says, there is a fallen noble hiding out there. One asks if this place doesn't reek of the smell of the rich to the others. One man says that their luck finally turned, saying that this job's gonna be a piece of cake, as if there isn't even a caretaker. Then that says it all. One of the guys then finds something inside a crate. He says that it looks like a noble's daughter really does live there. He takes out a handkerchief and says that there's a whole pile of fine ladies' clothes, freshly laundered. Smelling the piece of clothing, the man says that the scent on these clothes really is different. Hearing this, another one says that if they play their cards right, they might also be able to have another kind of fun. Someone else then sees them and tells everyone to stop. A man steps out of the shadows. This is of course Arhan, telling the man that his mother liked things to be tidy, and that she truly hated it when her belongings were a mess. Therefore, the man should quietly put that down and have a conversation with Arhan. Seeing him, the men are not sure what to say. One of them asks who this kid could be, and says that maybe he is the son of the mansion's owner, while the tall, muscular one says that there is no woman. Arhan asks them if they came here to seek food or simply a place to stay. If it's one of those things, they should say it now. He is willing to accept them as guests, if it's for one of these reasons. Hearing this, one of the men asks Arhan what he is yapping about, and if he has lost his mind. The man then gets irritated with Arhan and says that nobles must have no common sense at all, and tells Arhan that he should have just stayed hidden quietly, asking why the hell he crawled out and made a fuss. Arhan looks the man in the eye, and then lets his gaze drop. The The men then rage, attacking Arhan, asking him if he is so eager to die. Suddenly, Arhan raises his gaze. For a second his eyes change, with fire brimming around his face. In one swift motion, he drives his sword through the man's stomach. As the blade pierces the man, making him cough up blood, Arhan says that in the end, they were intruders. This is unfortunate for them, as he was only willing to accept guests. Later, the fire is burning in a fireplace. In front of it, sit Arhan and Liam, with Arhan wanting to ask his master something. He asks Liam if this is truly the sword he should eat. He says that this is less of a sword and more of a needle. Arhan says that he feels like this would just snap if he tried cutting anything with it, and asks Liam if he doesn't have the same view. Yet Liam says that this is expected. He tells Arhan that it was never meant for slashing your foes, nor is it for crushing them. Instead, it's a weapon forged for a single purpose. In a decisive battle, where life and death hang in the balance, it's meant to pierce through the enemy's vital points to end their life. Then, a woman is shown, piercing her enemy's neck. It's a sword that is meant to thrust, Liam says. Hearing this, Arhan can't believe it. For that purpose, he thinks, there would be a sturdier and more familiar weapon he could use. And Liam instantly realizes that Arhan's face says he thinks a spear would be better. Liam tells Arhan that the question he posed is not without merit. However, the memories dwelling within that sword are the most useful thing for his weak body. Liam tells Arhan that, before the death of its previous owner, she single-handedly did a lot of damage. That sword pierced the lives of over 2,000 enemies. All that, with a body even more slender than the one Arhan possesses, that of a woman. Liam tells Arhan that given the circumstances, he should treat the sword with the respect it deserves, and consume it with gratitude. Arhan walks toward the forge, and Liam warns him that while the physical weight of the blade may be light, the life dwelling within it is immeasurably heavy and solemn. As Arhan pulls out the sword, Liam continues, noting that Arhan will have much to gain from the weapon, specifically from inheriting that woman's memories. The last thing the child remembered was a burning mansion. Her name was Mary, and she was now completely covered in bandages. When the young girl, barely 10 years old, opened her eyes, she realized many things had changed. Her parents had been reduced to unrecognizable ashes in the inferno. Upon hearing that she was the only one who had barely managed to survive, the child whispered softly to herself. Lying in a bed inside a monastery, she told her caretakers that she wished she had died alongside her parents. After losing everything in an instant, the child was sent to live in an orphanage that worshipped the goddess of fire. The day she learned this place considered fire to be a form of salvation, her spirit was dragged to rock bottom once again. She, who had lost everything to the flames, was now forced to live in a place that revered them. She realized she still hadn't escaped the fire, especially since she now bore an undesirable mark, a harsh scar that would forever remind her of the past. The days that followed were horribly peaceful. During prayer hour inside the church, a couple of children noticed her. One asked what was wrong with the side of her face, while another boy told him he had heard she had been cursed by the goddess. Two more kids joined in. A girl declared the scar was the mark of a curse, and another added that it grew more disgusting the longer they looked at it. The other children started calling her creepy, monstrous, disgusting, and horrible. The relentless bullying only made Mary want to die even more. Every day, she prayed for death to take her. She wanted to escape the fire that had consumed her face. This agonizing cycle continued until a fateful day arrived. The young girl stood holding a sword, gazing up at the moon. Her expression shifted, making her look almost happy. In retrospect, her swordsmanship was nothing but rough and crude, yet it possessed a certain beauty. She had been watching a man named Heckle. He was an old swordsman, a former wandering knight who had worked at the orphanage for a long time. Normally, no one would have even dared to say a single word to an old man with such a harsh, unforgiving face. However, Mary bravely walked up to him. As she approached, she asked the man how she could become like him. With all her heart, she told him that she wanted to learn. With this simple request, she took her very first step toward actually wanting to live. Looking down at her, Heckle remained silent for a moment. He then warned Mary that his art wouldn't be of much help in life, especially for a young girl like her. He cautioned that a blade would only end up hurting her, and urged her to go back inside. But Mary wasn't finished. She fiercely declared that if she could just learn his art, no fire in this world would ever scare her again. For a long moment, they stared at each other in absolute stillness. Later, the old man brought out a barrel filled with various swords. Heckle told Mary to choose one, promising that if she could so much as swing it properly, he would teach her. She asked if all she had to do was swing it. Heckle retorted, asking what else she thought she could possibly do with it. Reaching inside, Mary selected one of the thinner blades, one that resembled a large needle. Pointing the sword steadily toward Heckle, she declared that as long as she could fight back, she would become whatever she needed to be. A small smile crept onto her face, but Heckle's stern expression remained completely unreadable, not showing a smidge of emotion. The scene then shifts back to Arhan's estate. His first thrust is clearly successful. The struck man is thrown backwards and crashes heavily to the ground. The other 3 men stare at Arhan in terror, unable to believe what just happened. One of them shouts, "What the fuck is this?" while another stammers that it must be a sick joke. Arhan swings his sword, splattering blood across the ground, and casually remarks that he supposes there is no need for conversation at this point. Liam's ghost watches the scene unfold from a nearby doorway. He reflects that over the past month, he has taught his young descendant only one thing, a physical conditioning method to run for hours without tiring. He hadn't taught him a single sword technique, yet the fact that Arhan just executed such a perfect thrust means he must be actively digesting Mary's memories and skills. Liam decides to quietly watch and let his young descendant take his first true step as a warrior. As the intruder collapses onto his back on the floor, violently spitting up blood, Arhan realizes what just happened. The exact spot where he pierced the man is a vital area that can only be reached by precisely sliding the blade between the ribs to strike the lungs. Someone like Arhan, who has absolutely no skill or prior experience with a sword, could never perform such a flawlessly precise thrust. Yet there is only one reason why this was possible: the owner of the needle he consumed a month ago. Mary's memories and instincts have been taking root inside him ever since that day. Heckle had taught Mary many things: how to stand straight, how to properly hold a sword, how to fight, and, above all, how to survive. Although it wasn't a systematically established martial arts style, Heckle's swordsmanship contained the romance and freedom he had gained while living as a wandering knight. To a girl who lived in constant fear of fire, his art was beautiful beyond compare. As Mary trained more and more, she noticed that his style carried a quiet, underlying toughness. Smiling, she fondly called it Heckle's blade, and she loved it with all her heart. A few years later, an aged and visibly weakened Heckle lay in his bed, with Mary sitting dutifully by his side. He told her that the time would soon come when she must leave the orphanage. When that day arrived, he urged her to go out and experience the wider world. This piece of advice would be the final thing he left her, his ultimate lesson. As Heckle drew his final breath, Mary wept. He told her how glad he was that she had been a part of his journey, managing to croak out her name one last time. Remaining perfectly still in her chair, Mary tearfully thanked Heckle for everything and prayed that he would rest in peace. Shortly after, just as Heckle had taught her, she left the orphanage and ventured out into the world. Before long, she made a name for herself as a fairly well-known mercenary. Perhaps it was because she wielded a peculiar sword as thin as a needle, or perhaps it was because she was a young woman, a true rarity in that bloody line of work. Whatever the reason, to the people she encountered, she became known simply as the Singing Gypsy. Snapping back to the present, Arhan realizes that this seamless integration of skills must be the digestion his master had spoken of. From the bloody ground, the fallen intruder begs Arhan to spare his life. However, Arhan coldly twirls the sword between his fingers. With a single merciless thrust, he strikes the man again, driving the blade straight through his head. Turning his cold, calculated gaze toward the remaining intruders, Arhan calmly states that he will put an end to this cleanly. Staring at the blood pooling on the ground, Arhan realizes that he has just claimed his first life. Yet, despite this being his first kill, he feels absolutely no emotion. His mind remains entirely focused on the harsh reality of the situation before him. He managed to find an opening only because his opponent severely underestimated him. But now that he is outnumbered, he knows he cannot rely on that same luck. The remaining intruders must realize this as well, he thinks. So why aren't they charging at him when they clearly have the numerical advantage? From behind, Liam's spirit speaks up, explaining that the men are terrified, and for good reason. The flawless movement Arhan just executed was simply not something a beginner could pull off. Liam continues, noting that while a moderate amount of fear helps one survive, excessive terror completely clouds a person's judgment. Fear, Liam explains, magnifies the enemy, tricking the mind into perceiving them as an overwhelmingly powerful entity. Right now, in the eyes of the intruders, Arhan likely appears as a bloodthirsty beast, or, at the very least, the terrifying embodiment of the sword itself. Realizing that Liam is right, Arhan decides he will not hesitate. With a single explosive leap, he closes the distance to his enemies. His eyes burning with murderous intent, he approaches the 3 remaining men, running on pure instinct. One of the men screams at Arhan to stay back. Desperately readying his weapon, he threatens to kill Arhan. Though his chances of actually doing so are practically non-existent, the man swings wildly, but in a blur of motion, Arhan effortlessly dodges the attack and shifts seamlessly into a counter stance. The sight leaves the man paralyzed with terror. With a single devastating thrust of his needle-like sword, Arhan pierces the man's neck, sending a spray of warm blood splattering directly across his own face. In that fleeting moment, Arhan recalls one of Hekel's lessons to Mary. Because she was a woman not born with brute strength or boundless stamina, a drawn-out battle would never be in her favor. Without missing a beat, Arhan pivots to his second target. This man is just as terrified as the last, yet he still tries to strike. However, with another fluid leap, Arhan lands lightly on his feet right behind his opponents. He internalizes Hekel's teaching. He must secure the kill on the first or second strike. In one brutally swift motion, Arhan drives his blade right through the enemy's elbow. The unbearable pain instantly forces the man to collapse to the ground. Another of Hekel's lessons surfaces in Arhan's mind. The old man had told Mary not to obsess over the physical traits she lacked, but rather to make the ones she did possess truly shine. Her greatest strength was her natural flexibility, a body as agile as a dancer's. It allowed her to strike lethally from any posture and any imaginable angle. Mary executing a breathtaking leap high over an enemy's head, driving her sword straight down into the top of his skull, until the blade emerged from his mouth. Channeling this exact memory, Arhan mirrors the lethal maneuver perfectly, decisively ending his enemy's life. Now, only one person remains. The final intruder frantically pulls out a knife, pointing it with a trembling hand toward Arhan. Staring at Arhan, he cries out, calling him a murderous fiend, and desperately begs to know what kind of monster he is dealing with. Later that night, the scene shifts to a dark forest. Arhan is digging a hole while Liam stands quietly behind him. Liam asks Arhan if he has finally cast away his doubt. A heavy drop of sweat rolls down Arhan's cheek as he methodically buries the men he killed. Liam explains that if Arhan possesses the stamina to swing a sword all day without losing his breath, then a few untrained thugs are opponents he can easily handle on his own. He adds that a caravan only grows stronger when thrust into a life-or-death battle. Looking down at his hands, Arhan realizes that everything his master told him was absolutely true. His body had become as effortlessly flexible as a dancer's, instinctively reacting to the memories housed within the sword, and Mary's memories had grown exceptionally clear the moment the fight began. He now understands a fraction of what it was like for her to constantly fight against the world. This was exactly what his master had spoken of, the power of digestion, where a warrior grows stronger the more they understand the life and experiences within the blade. Liam then assures Arhan that, when it comes to the harsh reality of this world, he never lies. He makes a solemn promise. The days ahead will be agonizingly painful, a brutal series of trials where Arhan will wish he were dead, making the hardships of today feel like an absolute blessing. Even after delivering that grim warning, Liam asks if Arhan is still willing to walk this path. Clenching his fists, with renewed resolve, Arhan declares that if it means he will eventually be able to point his sword at Carlos's throat, he will walk down this path no matter how treacherous it becomes. By the next morning, however, Arhan seems far less certain of his bold midnight declaration. Gasping for breath and desperately clinging to the sheer face of a cliff, with Liam hovering behind him, Arhan weakly asks if this is truly the right way. Clearly, Arhan had not expected his training to involve scaling an entire mountain just to reach a solitary tree at the top. Liam teases him, asking where the fierce fire in his eyes from last night went, and wondering aloud if his doubt has already returned, a comment that only makes Arhan sweat even more profusely. However, Liam then notes that this pragmatic hesitation is actually one of Arhan's inherent strengths, pointing out that he has always been that way, even as a young child. The path of a swordsman, Liam begins to explain, is broadly divided into 5 distinct stages. At the beginning of the path are the sword beginners. Among them, those with talent reach the realm of swordwalker. Those who establish themselves as strong and become the linchpin of the battlefield advance to swordrunner. The hero who can turn the tide of battle alone becomes a sword expert, and reigning above all other swordsmen, revered as a god itself, is the stage of achieving the mind sword, the swordmaster. Liam then asks Arhan to answer a question. Among these stages, where does he think he currently belongs? Arhan replies that he is sure Liam wants a bold answer, but he knows his own level well. The prerequisite to becoming a swordmaster is wielding mana, and to wield mana, he needs a vessel to store it, a second heart, the formation of a mana heart. Since he hasn't formed that heart yet, he believes he doesn't even qualify as a sword beginner. Liam praises him, noting that he is very self-aware. He confirms that Arhan hasn't even entered the path of the sword yet. He is a novice among novices. This current training is specifically designed to guide a novice like him onto the path of a beginner, so that he can finally form a mana heart. Hearing this, Arhan is left speechless. He turns toward Liam, screaming in disbelief, asking if he means he is going through all this life-threatening risk, climbing a mountain where he could actually die, just to form a basic mana heart. Arhan argues, telling Liam that he doesn't know how things were in his era, but nowadays, a person can simply drink an alchemical potion, or have a walker-level knight infuse them with mana to awaken their senses, and form a mana heart. Because of this, even noble ladies who have only learned basic swordsmanship for self-defense can easily form one. Frustrated, Arhan asks Liam why they bypass such an easy, established path. Why does he have to stick to this archaic, dangerous method? He simply doesn't understand. Liam explains that, just as Arhan said, the mere formation of a mana heart is not a difficult task, but it wouldn't be possible to just follow the modern norms for him. The blood of a caravan is imbued with the unyielding power of steel. Therefore, to wield that mighty power, an equally tough vessel is needed. An ordinary person's heart will never suffice, because the peak one can reach with a human heart is merely the peak of a human. If Arhan truly wishes to reach the legendary level of a swordmaster, there is only one thing he must possess: a heart that wouldn't be scratched even if it clashed against the entire world, a heart of steel, and there is only one way to forge it. Liam tells Arhan that to force his body to feel the absolute need for a mana heart on its own, he must intensely push himself to the very brink of death. Even among Liam's descendants, very few ever completed this training to the end. That is how painful and terrifying the process is. However, those who did endure it all the way to the end invariably became swordmasters. Liam then asks Arhan what he thinks about that, and whether it makes him feel a little more motivated. Reaching his hand higher up the cliff face, Arhan grunts that it makes him feel more than just a little motivated. Liam reiterates that he never lies when it comes to the sword, promising Arhan that the mana heart he will eventually create will be unlike anyone else's in the world. Later that night, in the Verdi region, everything is quiet. Inside a dimly lit tavern in the eastern village of Campbell, two patrons are talking. One asks his companion if he has heard the recent rumors about the village to the west, called Karavan. The other replies skeptically, asking if he means that creepy old ghost town where no one has been seen for a year, wondering why he would even bring it up. The first man leans in, explaining that a new rumor has been circulating lately. There is something currently residing in that western village. When his friend asks what it is, the man admits he has no idea, but whatever it is, it seems to be an incredibly dangerous being. He notes that all the ruffians who recently set foot there have never been heard from again. Some rumors claim that a monster wave the Northern Watch missed ended up sweeping through the village, while others insist that necromancers experimenting with dark magic have stationed themselves there. Despite the wildly different theories, they all share one grim conclusion: if you don't want to die, you must never enter the western village. Overhearing this conversation, a man seated alone at the bar stops sipping his drink. He slowly places his cup down, intrigued by the mention of a village where intruders are guaranteed to die. Picking up a cloth, he casually wipes a streak of blood off his mouth. A dark smirk crosses his face as he thinks to himself that this place will be absolutely perfect for him. Returning to Arhan's training, he reflects that ever since that fateful night, he began clinging to the cliff face using only his left hand. At the same time, he continued to deal with the uninvited guests infiltrating the mansion, fighting them off even on days when he was completely drained. Amidst the terrible muscle pain from his grueling physical conditioning, even on days when it was a struggle just to lift his arm, he pushed through with all his might, never missing a single day. Just like that, an entire month passed. Sitting alone in the forest and leaning his back against a tree, Arhan stares down at his left hand. He thinks to himself that, unfortunately, even after enduring that absurd training regimen, he still hasn't managed to form a mana heart. Even if he hasn't reached that milestone, he knows that a profound change is clearly taking place within him. The scene then shifts back inside the mansion, where a weapon is suddenly thrown directly at him, missing his eye by mere inches. As the battle unfolds, Arhan demonstrates exactly what that change is, noting that his senses have become incredibly sharp as he surges forward to kill his target. When the intruder readies another attack, Arhan realizes that it isn't just his 5 basic senses, like sight and hearing, that have heightened. His judgment and his ability to concentrate in high-stakes situations have also drastically improved. His overall awareness has reached a level completely incomparable to what it was before. Now, every time he wields the needle-like sword and focuses entirely on a single point for just a brief moment, he experiences a strange sensation. As he approaches his opponent, the world around him seems to slow down. He feels as though time has stopped for everyone except him. Exploiting this heightened perception, he easily dodges the enemy's attack once more and spots a fatal opening in the man's stance. In one blindingly swift motion, he pierces his opponent multiple times. Looking back on the person he used to be compared to the warrior he is now, Arhan realizes there is only one reason for this massive leap in ability. He can finally feel mana. The scene then transitions, showing Arhan standing back out on the weapon field. Arhan reflects that achieving such heightened senses before even forming a mana heart or officially becoming a sword beginner is truly exceptional. Of course, this is likely only possible thanks to the power of the needle, but it remains an astonishing feat. Calling out to Liam, Arhan wonders aloud just what kind of power he will possess when he finally reaches the next level. Liam lightly scolds him, stating that being impressed by something so trivial is the wrong mindset. Arhan still has a long way to go before he can shed the title of novice. However, he humors the question. Liam explains that once Arhan forms a mana heart, he will officially become a sword beginner and truly understand the depths of that power. Only then will he and the original owner of the needle be on equal footing. If he takes one more step forward, channeling the aura emitted from his mana heart, he will be able to exponentially enhance his physical abilities and construct a domain for offense and defense, officially reaching the realm of superhumans. The world calls this level a swordwalker. Although it is merely the very next stage after a beginner, Liam notes that Arhan will realize the vast, insurmountable difference between the two the moment he faces one in combat. Liam asks if this answers his question, and Arhan nods in understanding. In that case, Arhan requests to ask one more thing. He states that if his newly sharpened senses are correct, the man who recently entered their territory and settled there is a swordwalker. This is, of course, the same dangerous man who was previously seen sitting at the tavern. Liam confirms Arhan's suspicion, warning him that this intruder is on a completely different level from all the rabble he has dealt with so far. He then bluntly asks what Arhan plans to do, pointing out that in his current state, he wouldn't last a single second in a direct clash. Arhan replies that for now, he plans to simply observe the situation and prepare for the worst. He admits he has no other choice. Liam suggests an alternative. Arhan could choose to abandon the territory altogether to avoid a fight he cannot possibly win. Arhan, however, firmly states that fleeing is not an option. Although the land has been abandoned for so long that it has become desolate beyond recognition, it is still the only place that holds the precious memories of everyone he cared about. Hearing this, Liam falls silent. As Arhan stares at the ground, Liam's voice breaks the quiet, urging him to become stronger. He explains that in this Iron Kingdom, only the strong get to dictate the answers. Even if Arhan's simple wish to protect his home seems like an impossible luxury or pure greed right now, he must dwell on and ruminate over the intense emotions he feels. He must use them as the driving force to obtain what he desires. Arhan must feed on these trials and forge a heart as hard as steel so that he never has to lose anyone again. Sometime later, standing face to face with the deadly intruder who invaded his territory, Arhan wonders if he is able to stand his ground. The man snarls at Arhan, warning him not to even think about running away, but Arhan stands firm, showing no intention of fleeing. The man imbues his heavy sword with menacing mana, threatening that if Arhan even thinks about retreating or showing his back, he will be cut down on the spot. Arhan realizes that a deadly, unexpected trial has finally arrived. After the mysterious man set foot into the territory, observing him became a new part of Arhan's daily routine. What he learned during this process was clear. Even though the village was full of empty houses, the man acted as if every single one still had a rightful owner. He never touched even the smallest trinket, choosing instead to live a simple life relying solely on the belongings he had brought with him. His only other notable habits were losing himself in deep thought while watching the sunset every evening, or otherwise spending his time in quiet prayer. The conclusion Arhan reached was that this guest had to be a knight. Liam agrees, telling Arhan that this is the only reliable conclusion. He is a swordsman who has attained the formidable level of a swordwalker, yet he strictly adheres to a personal code and maintains his manners even when no one is watching. Liam adds that people so inflexible in their discipline are rarely found outside the knighthood. Hearing this, Arhan suggests that, in that case, the man might not be a bad first neighbor. Knights are, after all, individuals who uphold honor and pursue justice. Liam concedes that a knight is certainly better than the usual intruders, and while it is true that they pursue honor, he warns that it is dangerously misleading to call them inherently righteous beings. By its very nature, honor is highly subjective. You cannot simply assume that the honor they believe in and uphold is ultimately good for everyone. A knight's honor is defined by the person to whom they have sworn loyalty. the one who provides them with their livelihood and valuable riches. Ultimately, their sense of justice is dictated entirely by the will of their employer. Liam tells Arhan that he wants to teach him the true meaning of a knight once more. A knight, he explains, is merely a swordsman who uses honor as a pretext to exercise violence, an executioner who carries out efficient killings based on sword techniques passed down for generations. Because they are clad in expensive gear, they are simply enemies that are annoyingly difficult to kill. Liam reminds Arhan not to be blinded by the hollow ring of the word knight. Instead, he must observe and judge the true essence of the target himself. Liam then tells Arhan that doubt is his biggest weapon, because it is the most precious talent he possesses. Hearing this, Arhan looks up at Liam and asks why doubt is considered his talent. Liam explains that Arhan has been this way ever since he was a child. While he appeared to just quietly listen to the legends of Karavan, his father told him, on the inside, he was endlessly delving into the truth behind those stories. Even in recent situations where he might have lost himself, intoxicated by the sudden power he gained, he found the right answer by eliminating variables through his morbid sensitivity and sharp observation. Doubt, Liam continues, is a refusal to be swayed purely by what one sees and hears. It is the attitude of using every means, method, and endless thought to try to reach the absolute truth. Those who do not know doubt can never cross their limits. Therefore, Arhan must never lose that trait, for it is his greatest talent for surviving in this world. Hearing this, Arhan smirks and says that he understands. He promises to keep it in mind, thanks his master, and smoothly slips away from the tree where he had been hiding. Armed with everything he had been taught, Arhan never let down his guard regarding the strange man. After taking plenty of time to determine that the man at least wouldn't act like a common intruder, Arhan approached him slowly, very slowly, intending to simply invite him to be a neighbor. However, things took a vastly different turn than expected. Right now, the man is pointing his heavy sword directly at Arhan. The man bluntly states that he knows Arhan has been watching him this whole time, and warns him not to even think about running away. Sweating, Arhan simply points his needle-like blade toward the man, fully prepared to defend himself. The narrative then shifts back to portray the story of Mary, the singing gypsy. That alias was far more widely known than she originally thought. Thanks to her growing reputation, she received lucrative recruitment offers from well-known mercenary groups. Conversely, she was also frequently pestered by thugs who came looking for a fight after hearing rumors about her. In the midst of those bloody days, a certain thought occurred to her, just as she was piercing through another opponent. Perhaps she had evolved beyond the level of just a female mercenary using a peculiar sword. Perhaps she had truly become a formidable swordsman. But the moment that realization settled in, arrogance took root, and the consequences didn't take long to arrive. It seems that at some point, Mary encountered a knight who was simply too much for her to handle. He coldly asked her if she was the one they called the singing gypsy. Looking down at the defeated Mary, he mocked her, stating that it was indeed a fitting nickname for someone with such a feeble sword. He noted that she seemed overly proud of her own skills, but warned her not to flatter herself. He bluntly told Mary that if she were not a woman, things would be different. He would have crushed her like a bug and killed her on the spot. The only reason she survived that day was entirely thanks to the strict code of the Red Hawk Knights, who never took the lives of women or children. As he turned to leave, he told Mary to spend the rest of her life being grateful for their chivalry. That day, Mary felt an immeasurable, insurmountable wall between herself and that man, the towering wall called a knight. Later, she learned that the formidable stage he had reached was known as a swordwalker. In the memories Arhan digested, Mary was already far stronger than he is now. For her to have been defeated without even being able to lift a finger spoke volumes about that immeasurable gap in power. Snapping back to the present, Arhan stares at the man standing before him. As the night approaches, Arhan vividly feels an overwhelming sense of death, a crushing pressure far beyond the imminent danger he felt while clinging to the cliff. This intense fear must be the very catalyst needed to forge his heart, and he can clearly see why. He is witnessing the realm of a superhuman, a phenomenon only possible from the level of a swordwalker and above, mana spreading outside the body like glowing blood vessels, infusing raw will into both offense and defense. In a mere second, Arhan feels as though he is being cut all over just from the pressure. That is the terrifying path of the swordwalker. The man then asks Arhan why he has been watching him, deducing that Arhan must be the elusive figure from the rumors who has been attacking visitors. The knight warns that if Arhan cannot provide a valid reason, he will have no choice but to consider him an enemy, and demands an answer. Arhan calmly replies that he was simply trying to distinguish whether the man was a guest or an intruder. Finding this hard to believe, The knight demands that he be more specific. Arhan explains that he is a resident who was born and raised on this land. However, a year ago, while he was temporarily away, it was as if a necromancer had unleashed a beast. All his neighbors vanished, and the village fell to ruin. Since then, barbarians and vagrants have frequently invaded the territory, threatening the village and his own life, and he has dealt with them all by his own hand. While speaking, Arhan realizes there is no need to tell the man the entire truth. However, unlike the common thugs he had faced, this man is distinctly more powerful. So much so, that Arhan was certain he would die if he approached him carelessly. That is why he had been observing him from afar, trying to judge whether he was a threat or a potential ally. If the man proved to be a guest, Arhan planned to invite him to be a neighbor. If he was an intruder, Arhan would have had to devise a different plan for the territory. Hearing this, the knight asks if Arhan truly intended to oppose him, even knowing the massive difference in their skill levels. Arhan firmly replies that this land holds a lifetime of precious memories for him. It is simply too precious to abandon and flee. Hearing this, the man is left speechless. He lowers his gaze, softly repeating Arhan's words, "A precious place." His demeanor softening, he acknowledges that the young master has indeed gone through something incredibly difficult, assuring Arhan that he understands. The knight declares that it is now time for him to state his own position, as they need to understand each other's circumstances, if they are to be neighbors. He politely asks Arhan to lower his guard and his sword, promising that he will then sheathe his own weapon and share his story. However, Arhan remembers his master's harsh teachings. There is only one way to forge a heart of steel. He must endlessly push himself to the absolute brink of death, so that his very body begins to instinctively crave a mana heart. Remembering his ultimate motivation, Arhan refuses. He states that he cannot lower his weapon, as he doesn't fully trust the man yet, and needs his sword for at least a fraction of defense. The knight sighs, pointing out that if he truly intended to harm him, Arhan's meager sword would be entirely meaningless. In a standoff where both have drawn their blades, being the first to sheathe one's weapon would be a blemish on a knight's honor, and he is bound to uphold that honor. Arhan replies that he knows this perfectly well, but he still cannot back down. Kneeling in fear and giving in before a fight has even begun is something he swore he would never do again. The two remain locked in a long, silent stare. Observing Arhan, the man wonders, what is this boy? The youth looks delicate enough to pass for a girl, yet his entire body bears the marks of enduring grueling, relentless training. Though his frame seems flimsy, his balance is impeccable. It is clear he hasn't learned proper swordsmanship, or an orthodox style that pours everything into a single strike. At a generous estimate, he hasn't even moved past the level of a beginner. In other words, he poses not even the slightest threat. The boy must know this himself, and yet the man sees something in Arhan's eyes, a resolve he has never encountered before. The man readies his attack, drawing a deep breath and steadying his blade. He thinks to himself that a half-hearted response simply won't do. In an instant, the man spots an opening and leaps forward, prepared to strike. He decides to target Arhan's wrist, intending to disarm him quickly to avoid causing any serious injury. However, as he closes the distance, a light ignites within Arhan's eyes. The boy manages to dodge even before the man can get close enough to land a blow. Looking back, the man cannot believe his eyes. His sword was actually deflected by a boy who hadn't even reached the rank of beginner. Furthermore, Arhan managed to put significant distance between them in a single breath. All around them, the surrounding mana begins to surge like crashing waves. The man realized that in a mere split second, an abnormal mana heart was formed inside Arhan. Even with this development, deflecting a veteran's blade should still be impossible, yet the boy has achieved it. He concludes that it must be due to the nature of this new mana heart. While a typical heart is soft and flexible, Arhan's is stunningly rigid and solid, like tempered steel. Looking at the boy, the man realizes he can no longer be certain of anything, save for one thing. Arhan's sword is coming, and it carries the boy's entire being, a desperate stake on his very life. Arhan takes another deep breath, his lungs burning. He knows that blocking the knight's sword just now had nothing to do with skill. It was nothing more than a fluke. From the start, the knight had no intention of hurting him, aiming only for his wrists to avoid vital points with minimal force. That was the only reason Arhan had been able to deflect the strike. By predicting the trajectory and thrusting the tip of the needle into the gap to block the blow, he performed a miracle, but the price was steep. The impact felt like colliding head-on with a speeding carriage. Agony ravages his entire body, as if every bone has been shattered, serving as a brutal reminder of the despairing gap in power. However, amidst the pain, the thing he longed for so desperately has finally awakened. A mana heart, the heart of steel. Even so, he is still only a beginner. and a standard thrust will never reach his opponent. He realizes there is only one way forward. He must forge a path of his own as the possessor of the heart of steel and the needle, using Mary's memories as his stepping stone. He recalls the day she collapsed before the overwhelming wall of a swordwalker, facing an immeasurable limit head-on. In that moment, as her body trembled with fear, the first thing that came to her mind was Heckle's voice. He remembered Heckle's final lessons. Heckle had told Mary never to forget that while most swordsmen see a wall and consider it an impassable limit, that is merely an excuse for those who lack the courage to clash and choose to settle instead. Walls exist solely to be overcome. The fear felt before them is simply the fate of one who holds a sword, nothing more than a stepping stone to reach greater heights. Mary knew she must not look away. She had to stand tall and face the obstacle head-on. That is why she raised her broken sword to face the enemy, the same knight who has now returned to claim her life. She knew she would surely be cut and torn apart miserably, time and time again, falling to her knees in helplessness. But she believed that if she didn't give up and continued to strike against the wall, her sword would eventually surpass that limit. Now, Arhan must believe in himself with that same ferocity. All that is left is to do it. Standing right in front of the imposing knight, Arhan is totally locked in and ready for the fight. Clenching his sword tightly, the man declares that if you have ever held a blade, if you have lived a fierce life, you are eventually going to face it. That massive, unbreakable wall is blocking your path. The terrifying pressure seeping deep beneath your skin and the crushing sense of hopelessness make even taking a single step feel like a massive burden. Naturally, you'll want to turn your back and just run away. Yet, looking at Arhan, the man realizes this boy fully intends to clash head-on against it and absolutely smash the wall in front of him. Sure, this resistance might just be youthful recklessness, but that is exactly why it is a trial the boy absolutely has to go through. It doesn't even need to be a perfect path. Even if it's clumsy and incomplete, all that matters is having the raw will to reach the end. Even so, a flicker of doubt can still be seen in Arhan's eyes. He knows he has to hyper-focus. He has to closely watch exactly which muscle the knight flexes, how he catches his breath, and exactly what trajectory his blade is going to draw. Arhan needs to gather all that data, eliminate every single unnecessary movement, and finally forge his mana heart. To reach that ultimate level, he only needs to carve out a single, perfect path. Watching this intense scene unfold, Liam is bursting with pride for his descendant. He proudly states that advancing without ever yielding to adversity, that is the true meaning of being a caravan. Arhan shouldn't be afraid to clash and shatter. He needs to willingly throw his entire body into the trial to truly forge himself, and then display that ultimate might for the whole world to see the flowing will of the caravan. Fired up, Arhan relentlessly advances, prepping a massive, crushing attack against the man. Truth be told, he was terrified before. Just like the girl who originally owned this sword, she was the sole survivor amidst blazing flames, and the tragedy of losing absolutely everything was merely the beginning of her nightmare. There were times she couldn't even look in a mirror, days when just taking a breath felt like a massive burden. That is how Arhan knew exactly what she was truly afraid of. It wasn't the fire, it was her own weakness of constantly running away. And that is exactly why she decided to fight back. Her daily life, her family, her future, all of it was stolen by a world engulfed in flames. But if someone asked her now if she managed to pierce through that despair, she would only have one badass answer. She will never be afraid of the fire or the world ever again. Even if everything collapses, even if she knows she can't win, she will face it head on. Just like Arhan is facing this terrifying knight right now, the ultimate clash is finally happening. The two swords draw closer and closer, the blades violently collide, and Arhan's needle is suddenly sent flying out of his hand, leaving him completely unarmed. The sword is shattered. In that exact split second, the poignant memories of the girl come rushing back. She is calling out for Heinkel, asking him if the place he is at now is peaceful. She tells him that she followed his advice, finally left the orphanage, and stepped out into the vast world. Holding on to the teachings he passed down, and tightly gripping that single needle he placed in her hand, she became truly free, just like him, yearning for a life of wandering. She admits she isn't totally sure if she actually lived up to that wandering life. The world was swarming with monsters way stronger than her, and some walls just couldn't be overcome by sheer willpower alone. But she can proudly say this much to Heinkel: right up until the very last moment of her life, she never turned her back on a single wall in her path. According to Sergeant's doctrine, the two of them will eventually meet again, in the embrace of the flames when her time comes. And when she finally sees Heinkel again, she will tell him her grand story. And that story will probably start exactly like this. telling Heinkel that the little girl he used to know is not afraid of the fire anymore. With this beautiful, tragic memory fully resonating within him, Arhan's digestion of the needle is finally complete. In this epic moment, he has officially achieved absolute mastery over the girl's sword style. Later on, strings of light can be seen emitting from the ground. Arhan slowly opens his eyes, as if he's been in a deep sleep. He is lying totally flat on the ground, and it's clear that quite some time has passed. He eventually manages to stand up near a warm fire. Noticing he is covered by a thick robe, he wonders if he completely lost consciousness while trying to push himself back up. Realizing that the robe actually belongs to that terrifying knight, the harsh truth hits him. He totally failed to break through the wall. Gazing down at the broken tip of the needle in his hand, Arhan feels the sting of defeat. But then, Liam's voice rings out, telling him not to be disheartened. Liam proudly declares that it was a fierce struggle completely worthy of the Karavan name. Moreover, despite the painful defeat, Liam smirks and asks if Arhan hasn't noticed the massive change himself yet. Through this brutal clash, Arhan has completely and utterly digested the needle. Suddenly it clicks. Arhan realizes his muscles feel incredibly flexible, way more than ever before. His senses have sharpened to the level of a wild beast. He feels exactly like a hardcore veteran mercenary who has lived their entire life surviving on bloody battlefields. He finally understands his master's true intention in choosing this specific sword. It wasn't just about inheriting raw strength and technique. Liam wanted Arhan to absorb the girl's very life, her indomitable spirit, and a will that absolutely refuses to give up, even in the face of impossible trials. Still, Arhan grumbles a bit, wondering if it would have actually hurt his master to just explain all this from the very start. Just then, the knight returns to the campfire. He teasingly mocks Arhan, joking that the young master has finally regained consciousness. Instantly on edge, Arhan throws the robe off. The knight calmly mentions he just went to fetch some drinking water, but Arhan is already falling back, fully prepared to fight. Seeing this intense reaction, the man just laughs it off, casually noting that it seems they have a few major misunderstandings to clear up. Liam chimes in, telling Arhan there's zero need to be wary. This guy is absolutely not the type to cause him any harm. But Arhan can't help it. His suspicion is through the roof. The knight nods, totally understanding. He admits that after what Arhan just went through, he can't expect the kid to easily lower his guard. He sets his water down and offers a deal. If he shares his own story first, maybe Arhan will relax. He wants to explain exactly why he traveled all the way out here, and prove why he is absolutely zero threat. This catches Arhan's attention. He bluntly asks the man what he is doing out here. The knight formally introduces himself as Sir Patel, a retired knight, a wanderer with nowhere left to go, and a terminally ill patient standing right on the verge of death, revealing horrifying marks completely covering his chest and abdomen. Patel explains that even high priests who have studied medicine their entire lives confirmed the grim truth. He has a single month left to live at most. He states that he's nothing more than a dying man just waiting for the end. Arhan is left completely stunned. Patel gently asks Arhan to just listen to his story for a moment, and Arhan finally starts to relax. After the initial tension settles, the two sit down and talk. Now, regrettably, unlike his incredible swordsmanship, Sir Patel is not a very eloquent speaker. He frequently repeats himself, pouring out his heavy history and raw emotions in a totally incoherent mess. It is definitely not a smooth conversation, but to Arhan, that clumsy delivery feels like pure, unadorned sincerity. To sum up the massive lore drop about Sir Patel, after getting his terminal diagnosis, he officially left the knighthood he dedicated his life to. He became a wandering knight simply looking for a quiet place to die. His reason for leaving the order wasn't anything grand or dramatic. He just absolutely refused to become a heavy burden to his comrades in his final days. For his last moments, he simply wants to spend his fading time on his own terms. Arhan lowers his gaze, realizing there isn't a single shred of falsehood in the man's words. Patel is definitely not lying. Even right at this very moment, his mana heart is being brutally devoured by the illness. Once the sickness fully consumes the core, everything will shatter, and his life will officially end. Reaching a hand out to Arhan, Patel asks the young master what he thinks, wondering if this tragic backstory is enough to qualify him as a neighbor. Arhan takes a second, then firmly grabs Patel's hand. He tells the knight that sharing such a painful story couldn't have been easy. Thanking Patel for his honesty, he finally introduces himself as Arhan. He proudly declares himself the last resident of this forgotten, nameless land, and officially welcomes Sir Patel to the neighborhood. Watching this beautiful moment unfold, Liam just smiles from the background. He isn't mad at all. He looks completely content. Suddenly something clicks for Liam. Seeing Arhan's monocore perfectly stabilizing, and hearing Patel deeply thank Arhan for his warm hospitality, Liam realizes the timing is perfect. He declares that the time for Arhan's next major step has finally arrived. Fast forward a few days later. The bright sun is shining down on lush green fields. Arhan turns to Liam, totally confused. He admits it's hard for him to understand the current plan. Now that he's officially ascended to a sword beginner, he fully expected Liam to start directly instructing him in advanced swordsmanship. Instead, Liam is suddenly telling him they have to pack up and go somewhere else. Arhan points out that thanks to Sir Patel guarding the area, they don't even have to worry about intruders disturbing the mansion anymore. So why travel so far? Liam shakes his head, telling Arhan he still hasn't broken out of the mindset of an ordinary person. He calls Arhan a foolish descendant, stressing for the 100th time that their Karavan bloodline is completely different from anyone else in the world. As long as the blood of steel flows through his veins, traditional body-breaking swordsmanship training isn't the priority. For a Karavan, the absolute fastest way to grow is through the digestion of new swords. Liam hypes it up, revealing that their next destination is the ultimate location for this kind of explosive growth. It's a brutal place where status and origin mean absolutely nothing. It is a stage where only those who fiercely covet flesh-splattering strife gather for life-risking duels. Back in Liam's era, this bloody battleground was known by one legendary name, the arena, a place where warriors fight to the death for ultimate glory and massive piles of money. Finally, it looks like Arhan has reached the city of steel called Firma. As one of the cities symbolizing the Iron Kingdom, metallurgy has developed greatly here. It's no exaggeration to say that every piece of equipment in the Iron Kingdom is made here, which would make it the Holy Land of the Swords. However, before all that, the true driving force that completely revitalized the city of Firma was something else entirely. It is this very place, the arena. Liam looks up at the massive structure and notes that the name seems to have changed with the passage of time, but it still holds a deep link to the past. Above all else, he feels the intense, suffocating heat radiating even outside the stadium walls, and he smirks, noting that the absolute hype of this place hasn't changed one bit. Liam explains that truly diverse and brutal struggles took place right here. We are talking massive beasts dueling to determine the ultimate apex predator, wild and bloody death matches between humans and monsters, and even full-blown species duels to decide absolute superiority between different races. It is an endless cycle of dueling, but the most insanely violent of them all, the combat duels. Fierce gladiators boasting a huge variety of personalities and lethal techniques would literally roll in the dirt and fight like rabid beasts. In this bloody pit, the victor didn't just win. They took the life of the loser and claimed absolutely everything they left behind, treating it exactly like the spoils of war. Liam describes it as a truly frenzied fight to the death. The spectators, completely drunk on the metallic smell of blood, would willingly throw down heavy bags of gold coins, aggressively gambling and roaring with heated excitement. Liam declares that this is a literal city of madness, built entirely upon the deep pools of blood they have spilled. That is exactly what Firma truly is. Looking back at Liam, Arhan gets totally hyped. He points out that if what Liam is saying is true, then for explosively growing his power, there is absolutely no place better than this. Not only would Arhan gain priceless life-or-death practical combat experience, but if he also devours the weapons taken from the defeated gladiators, his growth rate would be insane. But right as Arhan starts getting pumped up over his genius plan, Liam just looks down at him, sighs, and bluntly tells him that he is truly simple-minded. He bluntly tells Arhan that if blindly eating weapons actually worked, he would have already forced him to eat every single rusty sword scattered in that trash heap, right down to the heirlooms left behind by dead intruders. But blindly devouring things simply doesn't work. If Arhan tried that, his mind would quickly be completely consumed by the chaotic, jumbled memories of 100 different swords, and he would completely lose himself. Liam drills a crucial lesson into him. The sword must never control the wielder. The wielder must control the sword. Because of that, until Arhan manages to open his eyes on his own, he is strictly ordered to consume only the specific swords his master chooses for him. With that heavy lesson out of the way, Liam hypes him up and tells Arhan to get moving to the hot place of struggle. 3 hours later, Arhan and Liam finally arrive at the massive arena. Arhan steps up to sign up, letting the staff know this is his first time ever participating. A receptionist with striking green hair tells him he needs to head over to the registration desk to get a medal issued first. She strictly informs him that without this medal, entry into the arena is absolutely impossible. Meanwhile, right behind Arhan, A bunch of intimidating, battle-hardened men are glaring daggers at him, looking like they are ready to straight-up kill him on the spot. Ignoring the bloodthirsty glares, Arhan is just totally confused. He looks over at Liam, wondering what the heck a medal is. But hilariously, Liam is just as clueless. The ancient ghost is left scratching his head, wondering what on earth a medal is supposed to be. Liam whispers to Arhan that absolutely nothing like that existed back in his time. The green-haired girl sighs and tells Arhan again to just go get his medal and line back up. It turns out that a medal is basically the arena's unique weight class indicator. It represents a gladiator's measure of martial power, granting massive fame and status in this world through specific colors determined by their match records. The official ranking order, starting from the absolute top, goes like this: black medal, white medal, platinum, gold, silver, and so on down the line. But of course, as a total rookie, the only thing Arhan is handed is a garbage-tier copper medal. Seeing this overly organized system, Liam grumbles that a lot has changed around here. Arhan just smirks, teasing his master that this structured vibe is completely unlike the blood-soaked hype Liam was spitting just a few hours ago. Liam defends himself, explaining that the atmosphere originally wasn't like this at all. Back in his era, it didn't matter if you were a frail scholar who had never held a kitchen knife or a massive northern barbarian who had chopped up 100 men. Once you stepped through those gates, everyone was just violently shoved into the exact same pit to fight to the death. That was the true arena of his time. Liam complains that these new weight classes are utterly preposterous, but Arhan rationally points out that it's probably all just for the money. He explains that no matter how much the Iron Kingdom reveres life or death power, if completely unbalanced duels kept happening for hundreds of years, there literally wouldn't be a single gladiator left alive. Plus, for the spectators betting their hard-earned money, matches with super obvious outcomes would get insanely boring. Having experts fight experts, and novices fight novices. Now that makes for a constantly entertaining show. Arhan concludes that times have simply changed. Because of these smart adjustments, the arena has become a massive symbolic landmark that people travel from far and wide to visit. It's the exact reason the current metropolis of Firma was able to flourish into a wealthy city, making it a highly successful business model. On top of that, Arhan notes that these days, even if you win a duel, you generally don't actually take the loser's life. It's basically become an unspoken rule between gladiators. Although Arhan adds with a morbid chuckle, the loser's body definitely won't exactly be walking out in one piece. Hearing this, Liam is absolutely disgusted. He complains that this is the arena, not some cheap tavern play, demanding to know what the hell all this soft nonsense is. The more the ghost hears, the more completely dumbfounded he gets. However, Liam admits that this soft new era might actually be super fortunate for Arhan right now. Since Arhan will be matched against equal enemies, it will be a fantastic learning experience that teaches him totally different combat lessons, without the constant threat of instant death. But until his first match starts, Liam suggests they take a look around the local smithies. He notes that the quality of weapons in this massive city will be vastly different from the small, run-down smithies near their old caravan. Plus, Liam reminds Arhan that his specific sword style is incredibly prone to breaking blades, so picking up a few sturdy spares is definitely a smart move. Just as they are walking, Liam suddenly spots something intriguing and asks Arhan what it is. Arhan glances over, confused at first, but then he sees it too. Right out in the open, there is a massive exhibition of various weapons, displaying all different types of swords and even heavy shields. Staring at the display, Arhan is totally baffled, wondering why a bunch of weapons is just sitting out in the middle of the street like that. Before he can come up with an answer, a man walks up from behind them. The guy notes that it looks like it's Arhan's very first time seeing the famous Hall of Fame. The man introduces himself as Tom, the official manager of the hall, and politely asks Arhan if he would like to hear a bit of history about the place. Arhan awkwardly glances over at Liam, totally unsure of what to say, but seeing the absolute hype and pure curiosity glowing on his Ghostmaster's face, Arhan knows exactly what to do. He respectfully bows, introduces himself, and tells Tom that he would gladly and gratefully listen to the explanation. He explains to Arhan that every single one of the armaments displayed here originally belonged to legendary gladiators who achieved truly outstanding accomplishments in the arena's past. Sure, the weapons themselves are all incredibly old, chipped, and completely worn out, having totally lost their actual function for combat, but they aren't here to be used. They are proudly displayed to honor the epic fighting styles of the warriors who once wielded them. Arhan is left completely speechless, just taking in the sheer weight of history surrounding the displays. Seeing the young man's awe, Tom smiles warmly and tells him that if he has any more questions about the hall, he can ask him absolutely anything. Tom humbly admits that sharing these legendary stories is his own little joy as the manager of this glorious place. But right in that moment, Liam's voice seriously echoes in Arhan's mind. The ancient ghost tells his disciple to ask the manager one very specific question. He pushes Arhan to inquire if there is absolutely any way to legally possess one of the legendary swords displayed out there. With a fierce grin, Liam reveals that he has finally found the very next sword that Arhan absolutely must devour. Geared up and radiating focused fighting intent, standing at the competitor's entrance, the look on his face makes it clear that he is ready for the coming battle. Before stepping out, Arhan asked Tom the pressing question Liam had put in his head. Tom smiled and revealed that there is indeed a way to claim those legendary weapons. Whenever gladiators prove themselves and their medal rank rises by one stage, they are granted the right to possess a weapon matching their new rank. To get his hands on the specific sword he was eyeing earlier, Arhan simply needs to secure a promotion to silver rank. Hearing this, Liam is highly enthusiastic, calling the Hall of Fame a literal treasure trove. To anyone else, it might be a museum of worn-out junk, but to Arhan, those swords are worth their weight in gold. Arhan now has a major reason to fight in the arena beyond mere training. He needs to secure those usable swords through promotion. Liam casually mentions that if it were up to him, he would just commit robbery and steal them all. However, there is a catch. Liam reveals that Tom is not just some polite old gentleman. He is a genuine sword expert sitting at the stage right before swordmaster, capable of using raw mana as absolute defense armor. Arhan is stunned that a superhuman of that caliber is managing a museum. Liam brushes it off, noting that eccentrics often reach that realm, so any grand robbery will have to wait for later. Arhan can barely believe his ancient master actually considered a heist. Liam notes that while the arena has changed significantly, one tradition stayed exactly the same: wearing masks. This practice hides a fighter's outside identity, status, and fame, forcing them to clash strictly as gladiators. Arhan actually appreciates this rule. Viewing his opponents as faceless gladiators rather than people allows him to fight completely free of hesitation. A receptionist asks the young gladiator for his official arena alias. She explains that no one uses their real name, as outside identities only become a hindrance in the pit. She advises him to choose a name he will be proud of, one that will accompany his entire life as a gladiator. Arhan flashes back to a memory of his father talking about Liam and the legendary family sword. Without hesitation, he locks in his choice: Liam. The receptionist chuckles, noting it is a name she is hearing for the first time, and jokes that it sounds like the protagonist of a night novel. Arhan brushes it off, and she sincerely prays for victory to follow his steps. Arhan officially dons his mask and steps out into the pit. Since this is the lowest bronze rank, the atmosphere is entirely lacking in hype. There is no grand crowd, just petty gamblers trying to pass the time between major matches. Instead of enthusiastic cheers, the stadium echoes with boos and harsh criticism. Hecklers shout down at Arhan, asking if he thinks they came all this way to watch something so boring, demanding he just hurry up and lose so they can get the match over with. Looking up at the tribunes, Liam sneers. He notes the pure humiliation and contempt directed at the weak, calling it a scene perfectly fitting for the ruthless Iron Kingdom, where only the strong rule. He asks Arhan if the boos are intimidating him. Arhan scoffs, dismissing the idea entirely. Liam smiles, telling him that is the perfect mindset. He reminds Arhan that by using that name on the battlefield, he is now shouldering the entire history and honor of the caravan. Arhan's eyes reflect a colorful intensity as he quietly vows to defeat everyone in his path. The announcer's voice echoes over the pit, kicking off the third match of the day. He introduces the fight as a minor bout meant to entertain the crowds. Pointing to Arhan, he presents him as a total greenhorn making his very first arena appearance, the rookie gladiator Liam. Then, he introduces the opponent, a fighter who, since his debut, has taken the lives of every gladiator he has faced, soaking up the crowd's mixed reception. It is the giant rookie currently riding a 3-win streak, Timur. The announcer dedicates the match to the goddess Lepri. Timur glares down at Arhan and immediately begins the trash talk. He calls Liam a weak-sounding name and complains that drawing his sword on a skinny kid is a waste of time. The giant then makes a humiliating proposal. He tells Arhan to drop his sword, take off his mask, and dance to the beat of Timur's clapping. If he manages to entertain the crowd and make them laugh, Timur claims he will generously spare his life. Arhan remains calm and brings up the unspoken rule about not taking another gladiator's life. Timur responds with loud laughter. He brags that he does not care about unspoken rules, stating that back in the Zernia Mountains where he was raised, men who lose are always killed. He admits that this is exactly why he snapped the necks of his first 3 opponents with his bare hands, claiming it as his rightful privilege as the winner and the best entertainment for the crowd. He insults Arhan one last time, mentioning that the kid is so insignificant that snapping his neck will not even provide a shred of enjoyment. The announcer notes the fierce pre-match tension and officially declares that the fight will start immediately. Without missing a beat, Arhan looks up at the giant and offers his own proposal: take back the insult to his name. If Timur apologizes right now, Arhan promises to let him die comfortably. Timur is momentarily speechless before bursting into mocking laughter. He pretends to be terrified to rile up the crowd. The spectators join in on the bullying, shouting that the young master is showing impressive bravado. They mockingly ask if he has been reading too many night novels, or if Liam is the name of his dead father. Timur smirks at the tribunes and tells Arhan that since the crowd is so heated, it will be difficult for him to go easy. He begins to say that if Arhan listens obediently, he might still let him live, but Timur never gets to finish his sentence. In a sudden blur of motion, Arhan attacks. A swift, precise strike connects, instantly drawing blood from the giant's hand. Arhan stands there coldly and tells Timur that he will say it exactly one more time. Apologize for insulting his name if he wants to die comfortably. Seeing what just happened, Timur curses Arhan as a bastard and prepares to fight back with all his might. Timur fearfully swings his sword in a desperate attack, but Arhan easily dodges the strike. Pushed back a couple of steps, Arhan calmly resets his stance. Watching this effortless evasion, Timur grows increasingly annoyed. He clenches his sword tightly and lets out a furious scream of rage. The audience is left in disbelief. Smiles begin to spread across the tribunes as the spectators realize this is not going to be a normal, boring bronze match. Arhan remains completely unflinching before the giant who was radiating overconfidence just seconds ago. Staring down Arhan, Timur wonders what exactly is going on. Just a moment ago, the kid was trembling and looked like a complete amateur. Trying to process the situation, the giant wonders how a brat is pulling this off. Then, the realization hits him. Arhan was acting weak on purpose. He faked his fear entirely to lower Timur's guard and create a fatal opening. Catching on to Timur's realization, Arhan smiles and asks if the giant is going to call him cowardly now. Arhan coldly reminds him that, just as he said, this is not child's play. Gritting his teeth, Timur curses Arhan as a sneaky bastard. He launches forward with murderous intent, declaring that he will kill him. Despite the aggressive assault, Arhan easily dodges every single one of Timur's heavy attacks. Timur grows increasingly impatient. Unable to believe what he is witnessing, Arhan is evading the strikes by a paper-thin margin, moving perfectly in sync with the curve of the giant's blade. Timur questions what he is even fighting, feeling an eerie sensation, as if a deadly snake is slowly wrapping around his body. Suddenly, Arhan goes on the counter-offensive. He slides low along the ground, preparing a piercing strike. In one fluid motion, he destroys Timur's leg. The pain is unbearable for the giant, who barely manages to throw a desperate retaliatory strike. It is to no avail, as Arhan simply leaps back to prepare his next attack. At this point, Timur can no longer even stand. He collapses to the ground, dropping his sword and clutching the ruined remains of his leg in agony. Arhan calmly approaches and stands directly above his fallen enemy. Looking down, Arhan throws Timur's own words right back at him, offering a new proposal. He tells the giant that if he takes off his ridiculous helmet and dances to the beat of his clapping, he might just show him some mercy. He promises that if Timur does all that, he will generously spare his useless head. Watching this brutal reversal, Liam smiles proudly, while the audience watches in stunned silence. Realizing he is utterly defeated, Timur remains speechless for a moment. He then slowly bows his head, telling Arhan that he will accept the offer. However, it is obviously a trick. Trying to buy a few seconds, Timur covertly reaches for his dropped sword, groaning that Arhan needs to wait a minute because he cannot breathe properly. But just before his fingers graze the hilt, Arhan ruthlessly drives his blade straight through Timur's hand, sending blood splattering across the dirt. Writhing in unbearable pain, Timur looks up. Arhan stares directly into his eyes, coldly warning the giant to choose his next move very carefully, because there will not be any more offers. Defeated and broken, Timur averts his gaze to the ground. He tosses aside his helmet, formally apologizes for insulting Arhan's name, and desperately begs for his life to be spared. The audience erupts. Nobody in the tribunes can believe what they just witnessed, and they immediately start cheering wildly for Arhan. They call the rookie gladiator amazing, completely ignoring his lowly bronze rank. Spectators eagerly shout that from now on, they are going to bet everything on the underdog and get rich, fully convinced that Arhan is going to keep winning. After this, Everybody in the audience starts cheering for Liam, seeing what just happened. Tom says that he feels extraordinary, as no one has ever received such enthusiastic cheers from the very first match. Tom then says that it seems he has formed a connection with a very promising gladiator. However, he is also concerned. In this arena, excessive attention is often like poison, he says, and some noblemen have also been watching this. A few days later, the sun is shining above the arena. Speaking with a fight attendant, it looks like Arhan has come across information that strikes him. He asks the attendant to repeat what she just said, and she graciously does so. She tells Arhan that the arena has evaluated him very positively. Therefore, although it is unusual, they would like to make a proposal befitting his performance. They are giving Arhan the opportunity for a silver promotion match and asking him if he would be willing to accept the challenge. 2 days have passed since Arhan's explosive debut against Timur. In that short window, he fought 3 more matches, decisively winning every single one by fighting with pure, rational efficiency. And now, management is suddenly offering him a massive shortcut to a silver promotion. But Arhan isn't stupid. This pure goodwill feels incredibly suspicious. Hovering quietly behind him, his ghostmaster Liam finally breaks his silence as the fight attendant explains the catch. The condition for the promotion is seemingly simple. Arhan just has to step into the ring against an opponent of management's choosing. The real twist is that he doesn't even need to win the fight. If he can just survive and endure for 3 solid minutes, the victory will automatically be his. The attendant hypes up the offer, reminding him that achieving silver rank means unlocking completely new tiers of opponents and raking in significantly higher match fees. Addressing Arhan by his gladiator alias, she asks Liam if he realizes what a tremendous opportunity this is. But the real Liam, watching from behind, warns Arhan mentally. He explains that this is a classic rookie stomping, a brutal tradition dating back to when the arena was just a bloody fighting pit. When cunning rookies fight too efficiently, the bloodthirsty audience gets bored. To entertain the crowd, management dangles a promotion as bait, throwing the rookie into the ring with an absolute powerhouse they cannot possibly handle. It is an exhibition match meant to humiliate the fighter, basically a public execution masked as a test. Liam bluntly advises Arhan to refuse the offer and wait for a standard promotion if he wants to avoid total humiliation. But Arhan has already made up his mind. He turns right back to the attendant and calmly accepts the offer, declaring he will gladly face whoever they throw at him. Fast forward 2 days, and the arena officially notifies him of his opponent. The fighter's alias is the Black Bride. She is a graduate of a prestigious sword academy, where merely holding a diploma guarantees the elite rank of knight. She is currently completely undefeated in the silver rank, and is known as a powerhouse sword walker. In every single aspect, she overwhelmingly outclasses him. Strolling through the city streets, Arhan tells Liam that he did some digging on the Black Bride. Her reputation is notoriously brutal. Not only does she dominate every match, but she is infamous for permanently crippling her opponents, leaving them completely unable to ever recover. Hearing this, Liam practically laughs. He notes that the arena executives truly made up their minds to crush him, and with an opponent like that, surviving even 3 minutes is going to be hell. He mockingly summarizes the situation, telling Arhan that he is completely screwed. Arhan asks if it is really that hopeless. Liam explains that while the Black Bride likely isn't as strong as Sir Patel, who had reached the absolute pinnacle among swordwalkers, Patel actively held back and tailored his swordsmanship to Arhan's level out of sheer honor. The Black Bride will show absolutely zero tolerance. Arhan sarcastically thanks his master for the terrifying reality check. But internally, he is calculating his odds. He knows Liam never lies about swordsmanship, but he also knows he possesses the steel mana heart and the unpredictable variable of Mary's memories. He firmly believes that enduring for just 3 minutes is entirely possible. Right in the middle of his thoughts, Arhan suddenly feels a strange presence directly behind him. A woman, her face obscured by a heavy robe, calls out his alias. She lowers her hood, revealing pitch-black long hair and a distinctive sword favored by Eastern warriors. Arhan freezes. He couldn't sense her approach at all, and the realization hits him instantly. This is the Black Bride herself. Arhan tries to play it cool, repeating his alias and politely asking if she has the wrong person. She is not fooled for a second. Telling him that he is making things troublesome, she suddenly draws her sword. Panicking, Arhan reaches for his needle, barely managing to grasp the hilt before her blade is resting smoothly against his throat. She tells Arhan not to waste her time, noting that his split-second reaction and unique sword make it impossible to deceive her eyes. But she lowers her guard, explaining there is no need for him to be so defensive. She only came to make a proposal. She bluntly tells Arhan to forfeit the upcoming match. She warns him not to make a foolish choice, advising him to spare himself so he doesn't force her to permanently ruin his future. Arhan stands his ground and asks what will happen if he still decides to participate. Turning away to leave, she throws one final, chilling warning over her shoulder. If he steps into that pit, he will have to pay the price. Later that evening, the scene shifts to the Hall of Fame. Tom is standing inside his museum, quietly admiring one of the historic displays. He hears footsteps and cheerfully announces that a welcome guest has arrived. Turning around, he spots Arhan and politely asks what brings the young gladiator by at such a late hour. Arhan bows deeply. He respectfully apologizes for the unannounced late-night visit, admitting that what he is about to ask is a deeply shameful request. Taking a breath, Arhan looks Tom in the eye and asks if it is at all possible for him to temporarily take one of the legendary swords from the hall into his upcoming battle. Back after the encounter with the Black Bride, Arhan stands quietly in the middle of the city square, reflecting on the tense conversation he had with the Black Bride. Her chilling words echo in his mind. If he chooses to participate, he will have to pay the ultimate price. Beside him, Liam states that the Black Bride possesses a terrifying level of talent. Honestly, a talent way too good for this current era. He explains that most swordsmen eventually hit the impenetrable wall of the Swordwalker stage, and their progression completely stops there. But for this girl, that massive wall wouldn't even serve as a minor speed bump. Liam notes that if she just gets a little bit of luck, the sight of her spreading her wings and breaking into the next legendary realm isn't that far away at all. To put it simply, Liam calls her an absolute genius. Hearing this high praise from Liam, who is notoriously strict when it comes to swordsmanship, Arhan realizes just how massive the gap between them truly is. Even so, Arhan hardens his resolve. Giving up simply isn't an option. Seeing his descendant's determination, Liam grins and tells him that time isn't waiting around, so they need to hurry up and secure that second sword. This is exactly why Arhan is standing in front of Tom once again. Arhan respectfully repeats his request to take a weapon from the Hall of Fame. Tom pauses, quickly putting the pieces together, and asks if this sudden request is related to the upcoming promotion match against the Black Bride. Arhan is surprised Tom already knows, but the manager explains that the news is making serious noise everywhere. However, Tom is deeply concerned. He feels that pitting a newly sprouted rookie against such a promising gladiator is a remarkably nasty prank by the management. Because of this, Tom sincerely advises Arhan to reconsider stepping into the pit. Tom breaks down exactly who Arhan is dealing with. The Black Bride hails from Yongwan in the East Continent and possesses supreme martial talent. She graduated at the absolute top of her class from the Temple, one of the Iron Kingdom's 3 great academies. She is a genius gladiator in both name and reality, who has already overwhelmed countless veterans. Tom kindly reassures Arhan that he also possesses excellent qualities, but facing such a raging wave this early in his career is basically suicide. He begs Arhan to just gain a little more experience, build up his strength, and challenge her properly later, when he can actually withstand the torrent. Arhan politely thanks Tom for the sincere advice, but respectfully declares that he still intends to face her. Then, Arhan puts on an absolute masterclass in acting. He solemnly admits that his body trembles at the thought of facing her, completely unable to fathom the height of her power. However, he claims that as a gladiator who prays to the goddess Lepri, avoiding combat out of pure fear would be a massive betrayal of his warrior's heart. He dramatically explains that despite the deep shame of his request, he came to the hall to borrow courage, so that he might receive the lingering energy of the great gladiators of the past for tomorrow's match. He reasons that if he miraculously survives, he gets promoted and earns the right to a weapon anyway. If he dies, Tom can simply retrieve the sword from his corpse. Finally, Arhan humbly lowers his head, stating he won't throw a tantrum like a child, and if Tom says no, he will quietly walk away, writing it off as his own foolish greed for a handful of courage. Tom stops smiling and goes completely silent. The old manager is visibly moved. He tells Arhan that, according to the strict rules of the arena, this request is absolutely impermissible. But, as the manager who has protected the souls of these enshrined weapons for years, he simply cannot bear to ignore the profound sincerity of a young master who acts more like a true gladiator than anyone else. Tom officially grants the request. Arhan plays the humble card one last time, asking if Tom is truly sure since he could get in massive trouble. But Tom just waves it off, claiming he has plenty of authority in the arena and can gift a brave warrior a bit of courage any time. A literal tear rolls down the old manager's cheek as he admits that seeing such a wonderful gladiator spirit after so long has made him overly emotional. Arhan bows deeply, thanking him profusely. Watching this entire scene unfold, Liam is laughing so hard he can barely contain himself. He mocks Arhan, telling him that if he had taken up acting instead of swordsmanship, he would have been a massive success a long time ago. Arhan drops the act instantly. He feels absolutely zero emotion over the manipulation. He just thinks logically. The conditions have finally been met. Now, all that remains is for him to digest the power of that new sword. The very next day, the match is officially set. The rookie gladiator versus the Black Bride. Before the fight, a flashback reveals the dark truth behind the match. The Black Bride was approached by a fight attendant with a highly unusual request. The arena planners wanted her to fight a mere sword beginner, but there was a sick condition. They explicitly requested she permanently cut off one of his arms or legs, just to provide a good spectacle for the bloodthirsty audience. The Black Bride was visibly disgusted by the proposal. The attendant knew this would be highly displeasing to a warrior of her caliber, so she dropped the ultimate bait. If the Black Bride accepted this cruel task, the arena would reward her with an item they had locked away in storage, the Dragon Sword of the East Continent. The attendant slyly noted that this specific blade holds massive cultural meaning to Eastern swordsmen, which is precisely why the Black Bride was fighting in the arena to begin with. Trapped by her own goals, the Black Bride remained silent, which the attendant took as a clear acceptance. Back in the present, the announcer hypes up the gladiators for a good match. For the Black Bride, severing Arhan's limbs was a proposal she simply couldn't refuse. Her only act of mercy was warning him to forfeit the night before. Since he ignored it, she feels completely justified. She draws her sword and coldly tells Arhan that he was given enough warnings. Whatever happens to him from this point forward is entirely his own fault. But the match is about to go entirely off script. Suddenly, the Black Bride pauses, looking around in utter confusion. A terrifying, overwhelming stench of blood is radiating directly from Arhan. She cannot comprehend how a mere rookie could emit such a suffocating, murderous aura. Standing before her, his demeanor entirely shifted. Arhan slowly speaks. Channeling the dark, digested memories of his newly acquired blade, he declares himself a resident of the free city, a warrior who has willingly stained himself with blood to reclaim his freedom. The scene shifts entirely, opening with the bright sun shining over a vast, beautiful sea. The narrative dives into the deep memories of the newly acquired blade, transporting us to the city of Crowd. This place originally split off from the ruined ancient republic to become one of the 6 incredibly wealthy cities. At one point in history, it was so breathtakingly beautiful that it was literally known as paradise. But history is cruel, and the present-day Crowd is a place where freedom and hope have completely vanished. The memory shows a nobleman in lavish garments casually walking through streets lined with desperate beggars. The once glorious paradise has devolved into a terrible, decaying land. The dark shadow over the city started with the absolute corruption of its nobles. They possessed a bottomless greed for luxury that simply couldn't be satisfied. Blinded by this endless desire, they actively sold the city's territory to a massive foreign power known as the Golden Empire. Eventually, they sank so low that they used the fundamental human rights of their own citizens as collateral to borrow massive amounts of gold from the Red Bank. With a single stroke of a pen, the citizens of Crowd were completely stripped of their rights and dignity, legally plummeting to the status of mere slaves. Faced with this suffocating reality, one man constantly harbored a burning question. His life was defined by pure tragedy. His father was brutally beaten to death just for begging tourists for food. His mother was forced to sell her body so her children wouldn't starve, and his little sister eventually died of a simple fever, all because they lacked a few worthless copper coins. Looking down at the tiny, lifeless hand of his sister, the man could only wonder why they were forced to endure this living hell. He finally found his answer in the most unexpected place, standing in front of a guillotine at a public execution ground. The man on the chopping block was being charged with assault. After being relentlessly tormented by a drunken tourist's rampage, the citizens simply couldn't endure the suffering any longer and chose to fight back. In a city like Crowd, bloodshed is a trivial, everyday sight, but a wealthy outsider becoming the victim was totally unprecedented. To immediately appease the anger of the great powers, the city staged a brutal public execution to make an absolute example of him. It was a display of unmatched, unfair violence. Tragically, for the man watching his former neighbor die, there wasn't even room to feel sympathy. The citizens were terrified that the outsiders would use this as a pretext for even harsher crackdowns, so they kept their heads down. The next day, there were no screams on the streets of Karawad. The day after that, the eerie, unfamiliar silence continued. The reason was chillingly simple. The incident made the outsiders realize that the citizens they treated as docile slaves were actually dangerous beings hiding sharp fangs. They could change. they could break their shackles, and in that heavy silence, the man realized that by doing nothing, the citizens were active accomplices to the violence and despair gripping their city. Their ultimate charge was the sin of not resisting. The man made a vow. He declared that true freedom comes with a heavy price. Someone has to willingly spill blood, and someone has to be permanently stained by it. For the sake of the freedom that belonged to everyone, to carry the heavy atonement they all had to bear, and to one day restore the lost paradise, he decided to become that person. He embraced the darkness, becoming a ruthless warrior in the shadows. Snapping back to the present reality inside the arena, the Arbiter's voice booms over the pit. He announces the start of the sacred duel dedicated to the goddess Lepri, officially pitting the Black Bride against the rookie gladiator. Staring down Arhan, the Black Bride's eyes narrow. She notes that when she first confronted him the night before, he gave off the distinct air of a hardened mercenary. But standing across from her right now, his entire presence has shifted. He radiates the heavy, suffocating aura of someone who has been deeply stained with blood in the shadows. He looks exactly like a master assassin. She is genuinely thrown off for a second, admitting it is a difficult situation to comprehend, but quickly brushes it off, stating that it changes nothing. Without another word, she launches forward at blinding speed. In a fraction of a second, her lethal blade stops mere inches from Arhan's neck, but defying all logic, Arhan smoothly evades the fatal strike. The Black Bride is visibly stunned. Based on his previous reactions and movement speed, it should have been completely impossible for him to even register the attack, let alone perfectly dodge and reset his stance. A sharp smile crosses the Black Bride's face. She realizes Arhan is acting like a completely different being. Adjusting her grip, she leaps forward to attack again. But this time, Arhan does not stay on the defensive. He meets her head-on. The two clash, and the heavy impact violently shakes the air. The Black Bride quickly realizes that even Arhan's breathing techniques and physical momentum have entirely changed, mirroring the refined combat style of someone else entirely. Locking blades with the rookie, she wonders exactly who on earth she is fighting, quickly realizing that this supposed execution match is not going to end easily. Arhan attempts to stab the Black Bride in the neck, but she shifts just enough to dodge the strike. He immediately unleashes a relentless barrage of motions, trying to end the fight quickly, yet the woman gracefully dodges every attempt. Observing his movements, the Black Bride notes that it feels like she is fighting an assassin and a mercenary at the same time. His relentless stance shifts make it incredibly difficult for her to predict his next move. She admits that Arhan has surpassed the level of a beginner long ago. For a moment it looks like Arhan might have actually landed a solid hit, but that is not the case. The Black Bride successfully blocked the attack. She tells him that even though he is no longer a beginner, rushing in like that is nothing but foolhardiness. Arhan immediately leaps back, visibly shaken by the exchange. The heavy force of her block has left his arm completely numb, and the Black Bride taunts him, saying she hopes he has more cards left to play. The arena audience is roaring. They cannot believe the immense amount of power and fierce fighting spirit the little gladiator is displaying against an undefeated opponent. One spectator claims he knew he was right to bet his entire fortune on Arhan. People in the tribunes begin debating whether Arhan could actually pull off a win, though others quickly remind them that he is up against the undefeated Black Bride. A man screams from the stands that, whatever happens, he hopes Liam won't die. A boring death. Arhan then notices a terrifying shift. He senses a chillingly cold killing intent that feels as if it could freeze his very soul, accompanied by a strong scent of blood that blankets the entire arena. He realizes this must be the violent world that his master, Fang, used to see. Liam explains to Arhan that while the female mercenary and the assassin of Crowd lived completely different lives, their beloved swords shared a common trait. Both were forged specifically to stand against enemies stronger than themselves, making them swords of struggle, in a world where the strong prey on the weak. Liam warns Arhan not to be consumed by the assassin's dark life, but to understand it, accept it, and make that power his own. Arhan starts to control his breathing, actively calming himself down. Watching him, Liam comments that he has done a good job, but warns him that the true trial only begins now. He explains that during their brief clash, that girl completely measured his capabilities, and now she is going to hunt him with everything she has. Realizing this, Arhan prepares himself. He thinks about how there is not a single bush to hide behind in this open pit, which effectively halves an assassin's skill and effectiveness. Furthermore, he can no longer expect his opponent to ever let her guard down again. His best option is to secure an advantageous distance and buy time. The 3-minute limit is a massive card in his favor, and if he utilizes that point well, he could still win. However, Arhan is quickly forced to realize that plan is completely useless. In just a fraction of a second, The Black Bride closes the entire distance between them. Arhan is stunned by her unparalleled speed. Watching from the tribunes, Tom notes that it seems Arhan does not yet understand the true nature of a swordwalker. A swordwalker projects a personal path that allows them to construct an advantageous domain of both offense and defense, suppressing their opponents. But on top of that, they expand that path internally to wield tremendous physical power, becoming genuine superhumans. The Black Bride tries to slash Arhan completely in half, but he barely manages to dodge the lethal attack. He immediately goes on the offensive, attempting to strike her down, but her raw power and speed are now incomparable to how they were at the start of the match. Arhan wonders if this is the true power that this woman holds. He notes that ordinary swordsmanship invariably leaves unavoidable gaps between strikes, meaning an opening should naturally appear the moment an opponent resets their stance. However, the Black Bride's sword has absolutely no such gap. Even as the movement seems to stop, the next step is already following through. The flow of her blade is unique, almost like painting a world upon a canvas using the seamless brushstrokes of a master painter. Once again, the Black Bride prepares her sword to attack, and Arhan barely manages to withstand the sheer force of her strike. Liam explains that this unique style is called martial arts, and is used by swordsmen from the East Continent. The technique focuses on mysterious movements that closely resemble nature itself, ranging from moving forward as if they are floating like feathers, to unique, intricate footwork and elegant sword trajectories. Liam points out that all of it connects into one continuous motion, drawing beautiful curves while still crashing down on the opponent like a violent wave. He warns that the only moment those continuous movements stop is the final moment meant to deliver the end of the fight, and in that very second, the Black Bride catches Arhan on the wrong foot. We get to see more about the assassin's story. He had a life dedicated to reclaiming freedom. With the death rising right up to his chin, he had to constantly run away. He ran, and ran, but unfortunately, everything needs to meet its end. He got cornered by an opponent he didn't even dare to face, someone who was an undeniable powerhouse. He knew instinctively that today, the assassin's life is going to end, but as the enemy was leaping forward, sword pointed, he started to see something. A circle. For some reason, the circle felt exactly like that thing that always allowed him to escape from the most dire situations. He puts his foot on the wall and pushes, jumping over the enemy's swords, and while in the air, prepares his daggers. As he is ready to attack, he notes that he will name this circle something befitting him, an opening, the same opening that Arhan used to cut the bride's shoulder. The bride is more than surprised. Arhan not only pierced through her path and escaped, but he even managed to cut her. On the other hand, Arhan is terrified. She is an overwhelmingly strong opponent. She not only avoided a fatal wound, but she even managed to counterattack in that split second. As a result, Arhan feels like his ribs are going to break apart. His surviving chances are getting slimmer. The wisest choice would be to forfeit, he internally exclaims. However, he steadies himself, as it's not about getting the silver rank, but it's about being a caravan. Such a weak option as giving up doesn't exist for him. Even the referee is shocked. Not only Arhan managed to graze the bride, but he is also going to continue fighting in that state. This fight is no longer an execution ceremony. This is now the birth of a new star. The referee starts pumping up the audience, exclaiming that only 10 seconds remained of the fight. Hearing this, the Black Bride jumps it, pushing Arhan back, slashing left and right, cutting Arhan's arms, Arhan's face, in other words, stomping him completely. However, as a drop of blood falls from Arhan's knife, he stills himself, exclaiming that those who never give up are the ones who create massive ripples in the world. Even if he lost everything, he is a caravan descendant. He is going to be a hero of tribulation. Arhan jumps in, clashing with the bribe, then leaps forward again, preparing another strike, a strike in which he puts all his faith. But unfortunately, the bribe dodges the strike and impales him in the shoulder, blood dripping from Arhan's mouth. The announcer's voice booms over the stadium, officially declaring that from this moment forward, under the grace of the goddess Lepri, the little gladiator is officially promoted to silver rank and will receive the silver medal. The entire arena absolutely erupts into deafening cheers. But despite the official victory, Arhan is lying flat on the ground, battered and completely unconscious. The Black Bride stands quietly over him, looking down at the ruined state of her opponent. She softly admits that, as expected, whenever she holds a sword, it is incredibly hard to suppress what some might call pure talent, and what others would rightfully call absolute madness and violence. As she confesses, it has been a very long time since she felt this deeply excited in a fight. Now, She is incredibly curious about this mysterious little gladiator who calls himself Liam. Suddenly, a furious voice interrupts the moment. One of the arena planners yells at the Black Bride, aggressively reminding her that leaving him in one piece was absolutely not part of their contract. The planner demands that if she still expects to receive the legendary dragon sword as a reward, she needs to cut off Arhan's arm and take it as a bloody trophy right here, right now. But the Black Bride is not going to play their sick game. She calmly sheathes her blade and looks at the executives with pure disgust. She calls them a bunch of vile people and mutters to herself that it would be best for her to stay far away from this corrupt place for a while. Just as she turns to walk away, something completely inexplicable happens. A massive swirl of glowing blue light suddenly manifests in the air. The Black Bride freezes, totally unsure of what is happening. She senses an overwhelming wave of pure mana and wonders if she is suddenly hallucinating. But as the light takes shape, she realizes she is staring directly at the ghostly figure of Liam. Realizing what just happened, Liam starts laughing out loud. He admits this is a completely unexpected twist. He figures that because his young descendant finally lost consciousness, or perhaps because their fierce clash of swords created a deep spiritual resonance, the veil simply dropped. Regardless of the reason, all that matters is that the Black Bride can actually see him. Liam casually addresses her, calling her a young girl from the East. He explains that while they are incredibly rare, the East has certain individuals known as shamans, who can naturally sense spirits. He realizes that she must possess a strong divine power, meaning she doesn't just have an absolute aptitude for martial arts, but also a deep affinity for death in the spiritual realm. The Black Bride's eyes widen as she realizes this is definitely no hallucination. Looking closely at the ghostly figure, she recognizes exactly what she is looking at. It is a realm that can only be reached by those who have achieved absolute, godlike mastery over the blade, the Mind Sword. She recalls the ultimate legend of Carlos, a warrior known to anyone who wields a blade, who famously manifested 10 Mind Swords to ascend to the position of the greatest swordsman in the world. But as she looks up at Liam's spiritual presence, her breath completely catches in her throat. She doesn't just see 10 swords. Above the smiling ghost, she sees tens, hundreds of thousands of spectral blades, filling up the entire sky. Staring up at the impossible sight, the Black Bride is left completely frozen, wondering exactly what kind of divine entity is standing before her. Liam looks down at her and finally speaks. He gently tells her that she is not yet ready to understand the answers to the questions she holds. However, he acknowledges that she truly has the potential to reach it, the ultimate destination of all swords, known as the Land of the Sword. As Liam's spectral form slowly begins to fade away, he smiles and tells her that he genuinely looks forward to the day they will meet again. And right before he vanishes completely, he calls her by her real name, So-Lun. Hearing that name, So-Lun is at a total loss for words. A deeply buried memory from her past suddenly surfaces. She remembers a man, most likely her father, asking her if she had ever heard of the legend. He told her that once a warrior's mastery of the sword finally reaches the heavens, they ascend to a sacred land where immortals live. In that paradise, the precious loved ones who passed away before them are waiting to welcome them into pure happiness. Her father had wistfully said that if their family could someday be together in that place, he would have zero regrets. Standing in the empty arena, the realization hit So-Lun like a physical strike. The legend was actually true. The ghostly figure she just witnessed wasn't just a master. Liam is a literal god of the sword. Fast forward to the next day. The scene shifts back to the arena, specifically inside the quiet recovery room. Arhan has finally woken up from his brutal fight, but he is currently looking at his visitor with total confusion. He asks her to repeat exactly what she just said. Standing right by his bed is the Black Bride. She formally introduces herself to Arhan, revealing that her real name is So-Lun, and drops a massive bombshell. She wants to follow him. She earnestly explains that she wants to see, hear, and feel absolutely everything by his side. Her ultimate dream is to reach the absolute pinnacle of the sword, and after what she witnessed, she is certain that following him is the fastest possible path to achieving it, and respectfully asks if Arhan will allow it. Arhan is completely baffled. He doesn't know what to say, seriously wondering if this is just some elaborate, new deception tactic from the arena. He logically wonders why on earth the Black Bride, a genius gladiator who is currently vastly stronger than him, would ever say something like that. Sensing his panic, Liam chimes in, calmly telling Arhan there is zero need to be bewildered. To the ancient ghost, this is a completely natural flow of events. Liam explains that during the brief moment Arhan lost consciousness yesterday, the girl managed to cross over and see him. She sensed his divine presence and became entirely captivated. Liam casually flexes, adding that since ancient times, master swordsmen have devoted themselves as his followers just by catching a mere glimpse of his shadow. But then Liam's tone shifts, carrying a hint of genuine pity. He notes that normally, a boy of Arhan's age should be experiencing the natural joys of youth, sharing a pure romance with a lovely girl, and just enjoying life. Instead, Arhan is chained to a cruel, bloody destiny filled with endless struggles and death. Since Arhan has already chosen this dark path, Liam warns him that he must cast aside all lingering, ordinary attachments. He cannot look back with the trembling gaze of a scared boy. He is a descendant of the Karavan. He is Arhan the Avenger. Therefore, he needs to coldly judge if the value of So'ulun as a swordsman is real. Arhan takes a breath and runs the calculations. She is a highly skilled expert who clearly holds genuine goodwill toward him. On top of that, she is an undisputed genius whose raw talent was highly praised by his famously strict master. She promised to help him achieve his goals, and Arhan knows having a powerhouse like her around will serve as incredible inspiration and pressure for his own growth. Making his decision, Arhan starts to address her by her gladiator alias, but quickly stops himself. He corrects it, addressing her respectfully by her real name. He formally introduces himself as Arhan and drops his signature line, welcoming So'ulun to the neighborhood. He tells her that he looks forward to working together, and with a slight, genuine smile, So'ulun replies that she looks forward to it as well. Next, the scene shifts to Arhan and So'ulun traveling away from Krawad in a carriage. While strolling through the open fields, Arhan decides to awkwardly clear the air. He tells So'ulun that this might sound strange, but there is something they need to establish right away. He asks her to listen without misunderstanding, seriously explaining that due to his unspeakable, complicated circumstances, he absolutely cannot become her lover. Logically, an awkward silence should have taken over. Instead, So'ulun looks at him with pure disgust. She calmly tells him that while it is a reasonable concern, he has absolutely nothing to worry about because he is completely not her type. Hearing her instantly shut him down, Liam absolutely loses it in the background, laughing hysterically. So'ulun does not hold back. She brutally explains that her ideal type is a guy who is taller than her, heavily muscular, with strong features and a rugged look. She absolutely hates scrawny, weak-looking guys. On top of that, she roasts Arhan's entire vibe, saying his impression is way too soft. He literally looks like the type of guy who would apologize if someone else picked a fight with him. She admits there is nothing inherently wrong with that, but it simply does not fit her aesthetic at all. She innocently asks if she needs to elaborate further, and Arhan humbly takes the massive L, saying he completely understands. Trying to change the subject, So'ulun asks if there are any other neighbors living in his village. Arhan happily tells her that there is one, and that she should be able to get along with him perfectly. He hypes the man up, bragging that his neighbor's skills as a knight are extraordinary, and that he has a truly wonderful personality. Meanwhile, the visuals show the grim reality. This wonderful neighbor has probably just finished slaughtering dozens of people, standing in a pile of bodies with his face completely stained with blood, yet maintaining a very polite, kind expression. Arhan and So'ulun finally arrive at the caravan territory. Walking up to the estate, Arhan notices So'ulun is traveling incredibly light, and asks if that small bag is really all her luggage. She confirms it, explaining she only needs her sword and a day's worth of food. If she needs anything else, she just procures it on the road. So'ulun then points out that Arhan only had one sword back in the arena, but now he is carrying extra daggers and gear. Arhan explains that his blade took serious damage during the last match, so he used his newly increased silver rank winnings to buy spare weapons and some much-needed armor. He praises the metallurgy of Firma, noting the quality is excellent, even if it costs an absolute fortune. Hovering nearby, Liam scoffs, telling Arhan to stop whining about the price. He reminds his descendant that the greener a warrior is, the more heavily they have to rely on good equipment. Stepping up to the estate, Arhan proudly introduces the mansion to So'ulun, but the grand tour is instantly derailed when they see a man standing out front, absolutely drenched head to toe in blood. Arhan realizes this is the very neighbor he was just bragging about. Sir Patel bows politely, asking if the young master has just arrived. Completely unfazed by his own gruesome appearance, Patel awkwardly apologizes. He explains that some uninvited guests arrived a bit ago, so he hasn't had the time to properly clean up the mess. Noticing So'ulun, he deduces she must be the new neighbor, and formally apologizes to her as well, deeply ashamed to show her such a messy sight during their precious first meeting. Arhan tells Patel not to worry, and to just catch his breath. So'ulun, however, isn't focused on his bloody appearance at all. She stares coldly at the dead bodies littered across the ground, thinking to herself that this is definitely no ordinary territory. Patel briefs Arhan on the situation, Just as Arhan had requested, a few uninvited guests had been snooping around the estate. Fortunately, most of them obediently backed down after a stern warning, but about a week ago, a completely different breed of intruders started targeting the village. Patel tried to send them away peacefully, but today, they attacked with pure killing intent. Left with no choice, Patel had to shed blood. Judging from the combat encounters, Patel confirms they are definitely not ordinary bandits. They boldly call themselves the Red Wolf Brotherhood. Hearing this, Arhan immediately analyzes the name. He notes that pairing a specific color with an animal is a strict naming convention exclusively used by official knighthoods, like the Blue Lion, Black Lynx, or Pure White Snake. It embodies a group's identity and deep meaning. Patel nods, adding that it is deeply displeasing for lawless bandits to dare imitate such a sacred tradition, which makes them highly dangerous. Soaloon chimes in with a sharp observation. For a bandit group to fearlessly use a knightly name, it means one of two things. Either their army is exceptionally massive, or their leader is so overwhelmingly strong that he actively looks down on real knights. Hearing this breakdown, Liam gets incredibly hyped. He declares that this situation is an absolute feast prepared specifically for his young descendant. Liam orders Arhan to wipe out the arrogant bastards using only Fang's power, entirely on his own, without a shred of help from his neighbors. Arhan sighs. Seeing his master stay so quiet earlier, he figured a crazy demand like this was coming. These bandits were fearless enough to openly attack a swordwalker like Sir Patel, and now Arhan has to face the entire group solo. But Liam guarantees the payoff. A body of steel is forced to grow stronger the more it is beaten to its absolute limits. He promises Arhan that there are no better conditions for fully digesting Fang's dark power than a brutal, impossible fight like this. If Arhan accomplishes this task alone, he won't just be imitating the assassin's moves anymore. He will finally be able to extend and carve out his own unique path. Fired up by the challenge, Arhan goes completely quiet for a second. He turns to the blood-soaked knight and asks Sir Patel a single simple question. Does he know the exact location of the bandits' hideout? Later that night, the scene shifts to the dark woods of the Sauter Iron Kingdom, deep within the Valdi mountain range. A couple of bandit soldiers are casually strolling through the trees, holding a single torch to light their path. They are complaining about their captain's eccentric tastes, wondering what kind of hidden honeypot he expects to find in this backwater territory to justify setting up camp here. One of them sighs, noting that this isn't the first time the captain has done something like this. He mentions the local rumors about necromancers living in the area, scoffing at the idea, and pointing out that there is nothing left to loot in this crumbling, abandoned village. The complaining bandit whines that he wants to go back to the last town they raided. He reminisces about how much fun it was after the captain ordered them to kill all the men and leave the women behind. He brags that if they had stayed, he could have lived just like the infamous Steel Count, and claimed at least 10 wives for himself. Just thinking about it makes him eager to leave this boring forest, complaining that it has been way too long since he even smelled a woman. But he never even gets the chance to look back. In a seamless blur of motion, Arhan is already right behind him. A precise, silent strike to the neck, and a firm hand clamped over the bandit's mouth drops the man instantly. Unaware of the silent execution, the second bandit, holding the torch, calls out to his partner, asking why he suddenly stopped talking. As he turns around, the sight before him shatters his reality. He sees his comrades murdered, their bodies lying in pools of blood. He immediately starts panicking, screaming into the dark, demanding to know what bastard dared to do this. Suddenly Arhan grabs him by the ankle. With a swift pull, he rips the bandit's legs out from under him, sending the man crashing face first into the dirt. Terrified, the bandit realizes his attacker moved so impossibly fast, he couldn't even track him. He genuinely wonders if he really just crossed paths with a legendary necromancer. In reality, Arhan is standing coldly over him, driving his dagger straight through the man's leg to pin him to the ground. Arhan coldly informs the bandit that not only did they stupidly expose their position with a torch, but their absolute lack of preparation for an ambush proves the captain's underlings are nothing special. Without a shred of hesitation, Arhan cleanly severs the pinned limb. The man erupts into agonizing sobs, but Arhan immediately silences him, clamping a heavy hand over his face and commanding him to swallow his pain. He chillingly states that he has absolutely no desire to hear the screams of trash. Staring up through tear-filled eyes, the bandit realizes this is no necromancer. It is just a kid. But looking into Arhan's cold, dead expression, the bandit wonders what the hell is wrong with this brat's eyes. Arhan leans in and calmly explains that he has a lot of questions. If the bandit wishes to keep his remaining ankle attached to his body, he is going to cooperate fully. The narrative then cuts back to the estate. revealing the tense conversation that took place right before Arhan's forest ambush. Sir Patel stares at Arhan in disbelief, asking him to repeat what he just said. He asks if Arhan seriously just requested the exact location of the bandit hideout. Arhan casually confirms it, adding that if possible, it would be highly beneficial to also know their specific combat styles and characteristics. Putting the pieces together, Patel realizes Arhan's insane plan. He asks if the kid is genuinely planning to wipe out an entire armed brotherhood entirely by himself. When Arhan responds with silence, Patel completely loses his cool. He yells at Arhan, begging him not to harbor such foolish, suicidal thoughts. He argues that the best strategy is simply to fortify the estate and defend it if they attack. Furthermore, since this bandit group stole the naming convention of a true knighthood, there is a very high chance the actual Iron Kingdom Knights will step in to wipe them out anyway. Patel desperately insists there is absolutely no reason to risk his life, but his rant is cut short by a violent coughing fit. His terminal illness is rapidly advancing. So Loon quickly steps in to help him, and Patel uses his fading breath to warn Arhan. He explains that he knows how precious this village is to him, but the Red Wolf Brotherhood is not an average group of thugs. They definitely have dangerous hidden cards up their sleeves. Patel begs him not to do anything reckless, as Soilune carries him away to rest. But Arhan has already made his choice. Pulling his hood up over his head, he quietly apologizes, stating that he simply cannot make that promise. Cutting back to the dark woods, Arhan has just finished extracting everything he needed from the bandit. He calmly wipes the blood from his dagger. Watching from the shadows, Liam beams with pride. He notes that his descendant has gotten quite used to the ruthless laws of the Iron Kingdom. Arhan gracefully spins the knife and holsters it, explaining that it is simply bad practice to leave loose ends behind. Arhan turns to his master and asks if it is really okay to proceed with the mission. Based on the intel he just tortured out of the scout, the bandit captain is no ordinary thug. Among the official knighthoods, he is commonly known as a runaway dog, a highly dangerous deserting knight. Even worse, the intel confirms the captain is a genuine swordwalker. Arhan notes the grim reality. He has already lost to 2 swordwalkers in the past. Liam raises an eyebrow and asks if that past record actually matters. Arhan stays quiet for a brief second before a confident smile spreads across his face. He tells Liam that it doesn't matter one bit, and immediately begins walking toward the main bandit camp. Meanwhile, back at the estate, the situation is growing tense. A blood-smeared handkerchief rests on a table. Sir Patel is leaning heavily against a couch near the window, his physical condition clearly deteriorating. In his feverish state, he experiences a painful flashback. He remembers a noblewoman warmly greeting him, telling him she heard he would be assigned as her personal escort knight. She praised his flawless reputation, calling him a knight who never betrays and remains absolutely loyal. She smiled, asking him to stay by her side and protect her just like the grand hero of a chivalric romance novel. The weight of that memory brings Patel immense pain, and the rest of the flashback fades into obscurity as he suddenly jolts awake. Soilune is standing over him, abruptly pulling him back to reality. She bluntly informs him that they have guests. Patel groans, admitting that dealing with visitors is highly troublesome with his body in such a failing condition, but Soilune remains ice cold. She tells him there is absolutely no need to worry about his physical state, because even if he were perfectly healthy, the outcome wouldn't be any different. Outside the mansion, the reason for her grim warning becomes clear. A massive banner depicting a mammoth with a sword behind it flutters in the wind. A fully armed contingent of true knights has arrived at Arhan's estate. The heavily armored soldiers dismount, and their leader steps forward with absolute authority. He demands that Patel answer his questions obediently. Looking down at the dying man, the knight declares that he is hunting a runaway dog and demands to know if Patel has seen him. The imposing figure introduces himself as Makan, the vice captain of the legendary Yellow Elephant Knighthood. Sir Patel respectfully complies, sharing whatever sparse details he has managed to gather about the Red Wolf Brotherhood. Cautiously, he asks Vice Captain Makan if the Yellow Elephants really traveled all this way, just to wipe out a simple bandit group. Makan confirms it, complaining that rumors have reached the capital about a runaway dog from their knighthood committing banditry out on the frontier. To make matters worse, the deserter adopted the ridiculous name Red Wolf, actively tarnishing the Yellow Elephant's pristine reputation. Makan brushes off Patel's intel as entirely useless, noting that simply knowing they are somewhere in the mountains doesn't help with exact locations or troop numbers. They will still have to do all the heavy lifting themselves. Patel politely apologizes for the lack of help, but as Makan looks closer at the dying knight, a cruel spark of recognition lights up his eyes. He notes that while Patel looks a bit different from his memories, He definitely recognizes him as a senior from the academy. Makan recalls his old moniker, the loyal Patel of the Green Deer. He was famous back then, an honorable, just paragon of knighthood who executed every command of his lord without fail. Makan maliciously contrasts that glowing reputation with the sick, abandoned shell standing before him. He coldly calls Patel a sick dog, laughing that his miserable state will make for excellent tavern gossip back in the capital. Noticing Patel's intense gaze, Makan asks if the sick man harbors some grievance toward a junior who doesn't respect him. Following Patel's eyes, Makan realizes what he is actually staring at. Makan's wings, the ultimate manifestation and symbol of a sword runner. Makan laughs, mocking Patel for still clinging to vain dreams while standing at death's door. He boasts that if Patel had managed to spread his wings and reach the realm of a sword runner, he wouldn't have met such a miserable end. He advises the dying man to accept his ugly fate and stop dreaming. Hearing this blatant disrespect, Salune quietly reaches for her blade, fully prepared to cut the vice captain down, but Patel immediately raises a hand, physically blocking her. He gently reminds Salune that in the Iron Kingdom, might makes right. He tells her there is no need to step in. He is fine. Makan sneers at the exchange, mocking Solune as an excellent, pretty nurse from the East, joking that Patel at least won't be lonely until the day he dies. Bored with the encounter, Makan orders the yellow elephants to move out. They plan to climb the mountain and hunt the runaway dog before sunrise. As the knights ride away, Patel is left staring into the distance, his eyes lingering on where Makan's wings had been. He remains speechless, clearly tormented by the unfulfilled potential of his life. He rests his fist against his forehead, quietly whispering that he is truly pathetic right up to the very end. But then, a sudden realization breaks his self-pity. With all this massive commotion happening right outside the mansion, there is absolutely no way the young master wouldn't have come out to check. Patel asks Solune where Arhan is. Solune responds with cold silence. The horrifying truth hits Patel. Arhan has already gone to the bandit hideout entirely on his own. Meanwhile, at the outer gates of the bandit camp, two guards are holding torches and complaining about their luck. One groans about being stuck on guard duty on such a gloomy night, while the other yawns, noting it is still better than being out on night patrol. As they speak, a figure slowly steps out of the dark woods. The yawning guard assumes the patrol team is returning, but as the man gets closer, they realize something is horribly wrong. The approaching man has no torch. He is completely alone, and his eyes are wide with terror. The man is completely under Arhan's control. He cries out, begging Arhan to spare his life, claiming he guided him exactly as ordered, but it is already too late. A fatal wound opens across his neck, and blood begins to flow. Before the two guards can even process the gruesome sight, Arhan moves. In a single, undetectable instant, both guards are dead, falling to the ground before they even have time to think. Standing alone among the bodies, Arhan reflects on his master's wisdom. He is becoming more certain about exactly why Liam chose Fang from the Hall of Fame. The original owner of the dagger, the anonymous Kwarwad assassin, was not a traditionally strong warrior. In a fair, head-on fight against heavily armored elite knights or seasoned arena veterans, the assassin would lose 9 times out of 10. But in a life-or-death struggle, the story changes completely. When survival is the only goal, dirty tricks and exploiting weaknesses become the ultimate weapons. Arhan steps silently out of a nearby tent, having just cleared the inside without making a sound. He muses that, in the end, the one who stops the others from breathing first is the one who survives. The assassin focused entirely on that single truth. He never assumed success. He meticulously planned for victory by always keeping the possibility of failure in mind. Arhan realizes this cold, calculated method perfectly suits his own habit of constant suspicion. Just then, a tipsy bandit stumbles out into Arhan's path, loudly slurring about how great he feels after drinking his fill. In a smooth, effortless motion, Arhan sends a dagger flying straight into the man's forehead. The bandit drops instantly. Arhan looks around the silent perimeter, calling it perfect. Every single bandit in the outer camp is dead. He retrieves his blade, noting that now it is time to hunt the real wolves. But deep inside the main camp, the dynamic shifts. The runaway dog, the highly dangerous deserting swordwalker, suddenly pauses. His eyes narrow in annoyance as the heavy, metallic scent of blood drifts into his tent. Inside the camp, an eerie quiet and stillness have completely taken over. One of the bandits enters a tent and freezes in horror. Everyone inside, the guys he was just drinking with, are completely dead. Before he can even process the scene, another bandit rushes over in a panic, reporting that the men in the other tents have all been taken out as well. There isn't a single sign of a struggle. meaning every single one of them died without even knowing what hit them. The terrified bandit stammers that taking out this many people without making a sound is the work of no ordinary man, urging that they need to get out of there immediately. Just then, a massive figure looms up behind them. Captain Murphy, the leader of the Red Wolf Brotherhood, demands to know why the hell they are making such a fuss when he just told them to fetch some booze. Looking around the silent camp, Murphy pauses. The heavy stench of blood pierces his nose, and a twisted grin spreads across his face. Realizing someone has been having quite a bit of fun in his camp, he aggressively flares his power, declaring that he doesn't know what kind of rat crawled in here, but it will be fun to bite it to death. Watching quietly from just outside the tent, Arhan is analyzing the captain. He counts out loud, stopping at the number 6. Liam hovers nearby, asking his descendant what his thoughts are after observing the man's path, and if he has found his answer. Arhan doesn't hesitate. He tells Liam that he has absolutely found the answer. He can easily kill this man. Arhan recalls his training regarding the path, the absolute core that turns a swordwalker into a superhuman. By extending this path throughout their body, a walker gains physical abilities completely incomparable to a beginner. Furthermore, by projecting it outward, it acts as a radar to detect enemies, and a domain to significantly amplify their own power. In short, a path is both a sensory organ and a powerful tactical weapon, meaning the perfection of one's path directly indicates their overall level as a swordwalker. Comparing the captain to his previous encounters, Arhan concludes that Murphy's skills are completely pathetic. Sir Patel's path had countless branches, each one straight and solid, creating an impenetrable, massive wall. Soloon's path was elegant, yet immeasurably surging, like facing a raging tidal wave. But the path projected by Captain Murphy right now only has 6 branches, and even those are excessively unstable. Arhan coldly wonders if this man even qualifies to be called a walker compared to those two. Hearing this clinical breakdown, Liam smiles proudly. He reminds Arhan that the massive gap makes perfect sense. The girl from the east is a once-in-a-century genius, and Patel, despite his illness, was a swordsman who reached the absolute pinnacle of the walker stage. Surviving against monsters like them was quite a feat. However, Liam sharply warns Arhan that raw power isn't the only thing that determines life and death in a fight. Arhan nods, assuring his master that he absolutely won't let his guard down. Back inside the tent, Captain Murphy sits down heavily on a bench. One of his panicking subordinates asks what they should do, terrified that the local rumors about necromancers must be true. Who else could wipe out half the camp without making a sound? Murphy instantly loses his temper. He tells the men to shut up before he tears them in half, calling them incompetent bastards. He orders them to use their heads and actually look at the bodies. Every single victim was stabbed precisely in their vitals with a single clean strike. No matter how monstrous a necromancer might be, they don't fight like this. Murphy deduces that this is the meticulous work of a highly skilled lone assassin. The subordinates are stunned that a single person could do this. Murphy notes that since the intruder hasn't been caught in his projected path yet, they must be actively hiding. The bandits argue that the assassin couldn't have gone far, and offer to gather the remaining men to track him down. Murphy agrees, but coldly warns the two men that if they fail to find the rat, he will feed them both to the dogs. As the two terrified bandits sprint out of the tent, Murphy sits back and tries to figure out who sent an assassin of this caliber. It certainly isn't the style of the Yellow Elephant Knights. He wonders if it was the family of a woman he assaulted in the last village, or maybe the remnants of a merchant group he beat to death for fun. Too many suspects cross his mind, but ultimately, he decides it doesn't matter. It just means more entertainment for him. He plans to catch the rat, torture him to his heart's content, and then track down the client. But just as the thought crosses his mind, a severed head rolls to a stop right in front of the tent flap. It belongs to one of the men who had just run outside seconds ago. Murphy is left utterly speechless before pure rage takes over. He grabs his sword and storms outside, ready to attack, but the camp is completely empty. He realizes that both of the men who just left are already dead. He wonders how the hell it happened so fast. Looking around, another chilling realization hits him. The entire camp is pitch black. Every single fire has been intentionally put out. Murphy finally realizes he is playing completely into the assassin's hands. Suddenly, Arhan appears directly behind him. The captain's path barely manages to sense the shift in the air. He violently spins around, swinging his heavy blade to slash the intruder in half, but his sword cuts through empty air. There is no one there. As his swing follows through, a sharp pain flares. His shoulder is sliced open, and blood begins to flow. Murphy grits his teeth, realizing that if his reaction had been even half a second slower, his head would be rolling on the dirt right now. He desperately scans the darkness, wondering what kind of terrifying enemy he is fighting. It feels as if the boy is completely one with the shadows. Melting back into the pitch-black camp, Arhan channels the lingering memories of his blade. He is an assassin of crowd, a phantom who wanders the dark, twisted alleys at night, fighting his way toward the light of freedom. In this pitch-black environment, the darkness of the world is his greatest ally. Meanwhile, Sir Patel and Soluni have made their way up the mountain to search for Arhan. After hours of difficult trekking, Patel's failing stamina is completely depleted. Coming up from behind, Solun points out that he is overdoing it and suggests they take a rest. But Patel flatly refuses. He insists they must find the young master immediately, explaining that these aren't ordinary bandits. They are deserting knights. A threat of this caliber is absolutely not an enemy Arhan can handle alone. Patel argues that even though the boy's talent is dazzling, he is still merely a freshly sprouted seedling who needs much more time to grow before facing a true swordwalker. Hearing this, Solun shakes her head. She corrects the old knight, stating that the little gladiator is no mere seedling. She leaves Patel completely astonished when she casually notes that Arhan's talent has already begun to bloom. Back at the camp, Captain Murphy and Arhan finally stand face to face. Sizing up the silent intruder, Murphy assumes he is dealing with a highly expensive veteran assassin. He demands to know who hired him, wondering out loud if it was the merchant group they recently looted, the women he tossed aside, or perhaps even the Yellow Elephant Knights. He warns Arhan to answer obediently, though he adds with a twisted smile that torturing the answers out of him will be fun in its own way. Arhan does not reply. As he steps forward into the bright moonlight, he draws 2 daggers instead of his usual sword. Getting a clear look at his attacker's young face, Murphy is stunned. He bursts into manic laughter, finding it utterly absurd that the phantom who just wiped out half his men is nothing but a greenhorn still wet behind the ears. Enraged by the perceived insult, Murphy actively flares his aura. He declares a change of plans, telling the little brat that he doesn't know what trick was used to evade his sensory path, but now that Arhan has shown himself, he is going to rip him to shreds. In a terrifying instant, the massive captain covers the distance, appearing mere inches from Arhan's face, and prepared to strike him down. Arhan remains perfectly still, taking a deep, calming breath. He reminds himself that the darkness of the world is his greatest ally. In the blink of an eye, he completely vanishes. The captain is left completely bewildered, swearing he never even took his eyes off the boy. Suddenly, Murphy is being sliced from all sides. Arhan reappears right behind him, landing rapid, precise strikes. Murphy frantically spins around, swinging wildly, but Arhan is simply too fast. The captain is baffled. He realizes that Arhan isn't even deploying his own path for offense. He is literally just disappearing. More terrifyingly, in those split seconds, Arhan is piercing right through the gaps in Murphy's own sensory path, tearing the domain open as if it were nothing. The memories of the crowd assassin flood Arhan's mind, perfectly guiding his movements. The assassin knew he was never the strongest fighter in the room. To defeat overwhelmingly powerful enemies, he had to borrow the power of his environment. His technique was brilliant. He would intentionally exaggerate his presence. He made sure the enemy heard his breathing, the friction of his clothes, and every single footstep. Then, the exact moment the enemy focused all their senses on that exaggerated presence, he would completely erase it. This sudden, extreme contrast in cognition resulted in total sensory confusion, leaving the enemy completely blind to his real movements. Channeling a specific memory, a moment where a single drop of sweat fell onto a dagger just before a lethal strike, Arhan flawlessly embodies the phantom assassin. He becomes the darkness itself. But even as he completely dominates the exchange, Arhan's sharp instincts flare up. Looking closely at Murphy, he senses that something is deeply wrong. No matter how incomplete or inexperienced Murphy is as a swordwalker, the flow of the battle shouldn't be this one-sided. It feels incredibly strange, and Arhan quickly deduces that the captain is intentionally hiding something. Deciding to end the fight immediately before Murphy can reveal his trump card, Arhan closes in to sever the man's windpipe. However, he acts just a fraction of a second too late. Right as the lethal strike is about to connect, Murphy abruptly turns his head. In a horrifying display of raw, animalistic resilience, the captain literally catches one of the daggers in his mouth, stopping the blade with his teeth. Meanwhile, deeper inside the forest, the Knights of the Yellow Elephant are steadily making their way up the mountain. One of the knights breaks the silence, questioning Vice Captain Mackin. He respectfully asks if there is truly a need to gather this much manpower for a mere runaway dog. Even if the deserter has formed a rather large bandit group, the knight cannot help but wonder if deploying this level of military strength is a massive overreaction. Mackin admits that it might look that way on the surface, but the higher-ups decided this overwhelming force was absolutely necessary. When the knight asks why, the vice captain reveals a dark secret. The knighthood has already secretly sent 6 skilled knights to deal with the deserter. All 6 of them were brutally slaughtered. The knight is left in stunned disbelief. Maken grimly explains that while Murphy might be nothing more than rock-bottom trash, when it comes to the sheer act of killing people, he is an exceptional beast. Maken looks out into the dark woods and asks his men if they know what Murphy's alias was, back when he was an official knight. The answer hangs heavy in the air. He was known as the Berserker. Cutting back to the camp, Arhan is realizing exactly why that title is so fitting. He stares in shock as Murphy catches a highly specialized assassin's strike with his bare teeth. With a sickening crunch, Murphy literally chews on the steel, completely shattering Arhan's dagger into pieces. Taken entirely by surprise, Arhan finally understands why they call this man a beast. In the next fraction of a second, Murphy launches a ferocious counterattack, managing to graze Arhan. His opponent's speed and physical power have completely skyrocketed from just a moment ago. Without hesitating, Murphy lunges forward to grab him. Arhan swiftly evades the grapple and aggressively counters, plunging his second dagger directly into Murphy's hand. But the strike does absolutely no damage. Instead, the sheer density of Murphy's aura and hardened flesh completely destroys Arhan's blade, shattering it into a million useless fragments. Ignoring the strike entirely, Murphy violently crashes into Arhan, throwing the young gladiator backward as the Berserker immediately prepares his next lethal assault. Regaining his footing, Arhan is left in awe of the sheer power on display. Murphy's fighting style and aura were already ferocious, but now he has gone completely beyond human limits. He has mutated into a bloodthirsty beast, his physical abilities drastically multiplying while his projected path becomes incredibly heavy and ominous. Watching the violent transformation, Liam calmly explains the phenomenon. He tells Arhan that there are occasionally rare mutants like Murphy in the world. When a warrior completely lacks true conviction and allows themselves to become hopelessly drunk on pure murderous intent, that corruption reflects directly into their path. It results in a berserker state, a beast-like form where the user slowly loses all logical reasoning, but gains immense, overwhelming physical power in return. Liam firmly tells Arhan that to eliminate a monster like this, he must ensure the complete digestion of the assassin's memories and fully complete his own path, right here, right now. Hearing his master's strict advice, he looks down at his hands and quietly drops the shattered hilts of his useless daggers. He notes that there is only one true way to temper iron that hasn't fully matured yet. There are no more tricks or shadows to hide behind. The only way forward is to clash head-on. With his resolve locked in, Arhan pushes off the ground and launches himself directly at the Berserker's head. But a head-on clash isn't nearly enough to take down a monster like Murphy. Murphy retaliates with a brutal slash, but Arhan swiftly dodges. As the Berserker swings again, Arhan leaps high into the air, gracefully landing right at Murphy's blind side. Enraged, Murphy unleashes another heavy assault. Arhan barely manages to deflect the crushing strike with his twin daggers. Analyzing the massive gap in raw strength, Arhan formulates a new plan. He decides to focus entirely on dodging and parrying. If he can't break the beast's dense bones, he will simply have to carve away his flesh piece by piece. But glancing down at his weapons, Arhan realizes his standard daggers are severely chipped and on the verge of shattering under the Berserker's overwhelming power. Suddenly, a massive shockwave of aura erupts from the captain. He charges forward like a runaway train, but instead of retreating, Arhan runs directly toward the beast with his cracked blades. Dropping incredibly low to the ground, Arhan perfectly ducks under Murphy's massive sweeping grab. In one fluid motion, Arhan ruthlessly slashes both of the Berserker's ankles and slips right behind him. Murphy violently spins around to crush his attacker, but Arhan is already gone. For a brief, terrifying split second, the blinding rage of Murphy's Berserker state completely wavers in confusion. Arhan is already positioned perfectly in his blind spot. He coldly notes that no matter how incredibly thick a monster's hide may be, there is always a weak point. Without hesitation, Arhan thrusts his dagger directly toward Murphy's right eye, but the blade is forced to stop mere millimeters away from the retina. As Murphy's raw survival instincts kick in, Arhan is forced to leap back to avoid Murphy's desperate counterattack, narrowly dodging a wild slash. But the Berserker follows up instantly. With Arhan momentarily suspended in the air and nowhere left to run, Murphy brings down a devastating punch from above. The heavy blow connects cleanly. Arhan violently coughs up blood as he is slammed into the dirt, the sheer impact leaving his body practically paralyzed. Struggling to breathe, Arhan admits he nearly lost consciousness for a second. He is stunned that a single grazing punch could inflict so much damage. However, a dark smirk crosses his bruised face. He promises that he made absolutely sure to return the favor. As Murphy steps forward, heavy streams of blood pour down the captain's face. Arhan's interrupted strike wasn't a total miss after all. In that brutal split-second exchange, he successfully carved out the berserker's right eye. Now, the bleeding beast is left to fight with only half his vision. Murphy reaches up and yanks the shattered dagger from his ruined eye, letting it drop to the dirt as blood pours heavily down his face. The agonizing wound only pushes him further into a frenzy. The captain lets out a deafening roar and charges blindly at Arhan. Arhan coldly calculates the grim situation. Taking the beast's vision was a solid tactical move, but the sheer pain has only made Murphy's aura far more ferocious. Given the massive gap in raw strength, a single direct blow will instantly kill the young gladiator. To make matters worse, Arhan's final remaining dagger is deeply chipped, and on the absolute verge of completely shattering. Every rational instinct in Arhan's mind screams at him to retreat, to run away, hide, and live, to fight another day. But feeling that overwhelming urge to flee makes Arhan realize exactly what he actually has to do. As the raging giant leaps toward him, Arhan anchors his feet to the ground. He must stand and fight. In that critical moment, the final, heaviest memories of the crowd assassin flood Arhan's mind. The free city had completely lost its freedom, and someone had to spill blood to pave the way back. The assassin had willingly chosen to be that dark sacrifice. He honed his lethal skills in the brutal arena of Firma, threw his body into countless life-or-death struggles, and crossed oceans of blood to protect his home. But eventually, he reached the end of the line. Stripped of the shadows he used to hide in, his broken body was dragged across a public square toward a towering guillotine. The armored knight who captured him addressed the terrified crowd. He presented the battered assassin as a grim warning, declaring that this wretched end is exactly what happens to murderers who slaughter faithful enforcers and innocent nobles. He commanded the citizens to burn this miserable sight into their minds, ordering them to bow their heads, submit to the order, and never dare to resist. Defeated and broken, the crowd lowered their gazes, except for one person. A single citizen silently stepped out of the crowd, approached the execution block, and quickly sliced through the assassin's binding ropes. Realizing he had been given one final chance, the assassin knew it couldn't end like this. With his hands free, he instantly lunged at the nearest guard, fighting desperately, even using his bare teeth to tear out a throat. He refused to die powerless like trash in a foul-smelling back alley. He was completely willing to be trampled into dust, but he absolutely refused to succumb to corrupt power. He vowed to become the darkest shadow solely to illuminate the blazing light of freedom. Bleeding and dying, the assassin screamed to the citizens of crowd, begging them not to bow their heads. He urged them to show the world their will to fight, and to actively resist anyone who tried to strip away their fundamental rights. Ignited by his desperate final stand, the citizens snapped, as the oppressed people aggressively swarmed the corrupt nobles and guards. Standing bloodied over the very knight who captured him, the assassin whispered his final words. All of this was for freedom. As he collapsed into unconsciousness, the square erupted into cheers for liberation. The corrupt guards were wiped out, and the angry mob surrounded the final knight. The era of domination over crowd ended right there. The memory flawlessly aligns with the present. Back in the pitch-black camp, Arhan stands perfectly still, his face completely devoid of emotion as the berserker bears down on him. Arhan fully embraces the single, unyielding will left behind by the darkest shadow of crowd, choosing to carry that heavy legacy forward. In one explosive, flawless motion, Arhan steps directly into the beast's attack, completely breaking through Murphy's projected path, cleanly severing the captain's head from his shoulders. As Murphy's lifeless body hits the dirt, a profound shift occurs within Arhan's monocore. The dark, bloody legacy of the crowd assassin has been fully absorbed. The dagger, Fang, has been completely digested. The victor is undeniably clear. While Arhan looks out toward the dark mountains, the grueling fight has finally ended, and a heavy wave of relief washes over the young gladiator. He realizes that the exact moment the memories imbued within Fang were fully digested, he finally saw it. It had been faint for so long, a straight blue line that seemed within reach, yet always slipped away. But now, instinctively, he knows that this is his true path. Liam looks down at Arhan with a proud grin. He explains that, although still inexperienced, Arhan can now unfold his path by his own will. He has officially stepped into the entry level of a swordwalker. Liam proudly notes that even at the entry level, Arhan cannot be compared to the beast he just struck down. The caravan's path extends without ever bending in the face of any obstacle, because it is the absolute path of steel. Liam adds that in the past, Those captivated by its majesty used to call it the line. However, he quickly humbles his descendant, noting that Arhan's current level still isn't fit to truly speak of that legendary title. Right on cue, the adrenaline fades, and Arhan collapses face first into the mud. He asks his master why every ounce of strength has left his body. Liam casually explains that this is simply the backlash of channeling excessive power through a body that isn't fully trained yet, assuring him he will recover quickly. Then, wearing a deeply unsettling, almost mad expression, Liam asks Arhan if he isn't looking forward to the brutal training that awaits him to mature as a walker. Lying in the dirt, Arhan reflects on the situation. Just as Liam said, becoming a true superhuman is still out of the question at this entry level, but he has finally taken a massive step forward. This isn't the half-baked imitation he relied on during his spar with Sir Patel. This is a path that is now completely his own. Eventually, a torchlight cuts through the darkness. Sir Patel and Solun have finally reached the camp, rushing over to check if Arhan is okay. Still exhausted, Arhan asks what they are doing all the way out here. Recovering just enough strength to sit up on a nearby rock, he wipes the mud from his face and politely thanks Solun, admitting he feels much more refreshed. Patel surveys the absolute carnage and asks in disbelief if Arhan truly wiped out the entire bandit group by himself, calling the feat completely unheard of. Arhan humbly brushes it off, claiming that luck was simply on his side, but Patel isn't convinced. He repeats the word luck and stares intensely at the boy. The old knight admits he knew the young master possessed special talent, but he was still a beginner lacking in many areas. For a rookie to single-handedly defeat a runaway knight, Patel thought such a miracle was only possible for the legendary bloodlines of the 5 great families. He muses that perhaps Arhan really is just like the protagonist of an epic story, a role not just anyone can assume. With a profound look, Patel softly adds that he thinks he finally understands exactly why fate led him to travel all the way to this specific territory. Confused, Arhan asks what he means by that, but Patel waves it off. He urges them to head back down the mountain immediately, warning that delaying any longer is highly dangerous. He explains that the official knighthood the runaway dog belonged to is actively roaming the area, looking to execute the traitor themselves to restore their sullied honor. Arhan is baffled, pointing out that since he already took care of the problem, shouldn't the knights be thanking him? Solun quickly intervenes, explaining that a knighthood's logic is far removed from common sense. Instead of being grateful, they will be enraged that an outsider robbed them of the retribution they were meant to dish out. She coldly notes that a knighthood is simply a gathering of beings rigidly bound by meaningless concepts like honor and pretext. Arhan shakes his head at the twisted logic. Liam chuckles, reminding his disciple that he warned him earlier about how troublesome rigid swordsmen can be to deal with. Suddenly, Liam's expression sharpens. He notes that something is afoot, and the time has come for Arhan to experience that troublesome logic firsthand. The Yellow Elephant Knights arrive at the blood-soaked campsite. Vice Captain Mackin steps to the front, taking in the scene. Staring down at Murphy's severed head, his face contorts with pure fury. He demands to know who dared to touch the runaway dog they were supposed to condemn, actively robbing the Yellow Elephants of their rightful honor. Mackin locks eyes with the group and projects a suffocating aura, declaring that there is no mercy in the march of an angry elephant. He glares directly at Patel, ordering the sick deer to answer if he doesn't wish to be trampled. The raw power Mackin exudes is completely overwhelming. Arhan notes that he can barely even withstand the pressure. He realizes this vice captain surpasses both Sir Patel and Solun. He is an impossibly powerful figure. Knowing that everyone will end up in massive trouble because of his actions, Arhan tries to think of a way to resolve the situation. But before he can speak, Sir Patel steps forward. Looking the vice captain dead in the eye, Patel calmly declares that he was the one who killed Murphy. Arhan freezes in stunned silence. Mackin's eyes narrow as he asks Patel to repeat himself. Mockingly, Patel asks if the vice captain is hard of hearing. He proudly reintroduces himself, a former knight of the Green Deer, victorious in 17 honor duels, known as Patel the Loyal, and he clearly states that he executed the runaway dog. Realizing Patel is taking the fall for him, Arhan starts to shout, demanding to know what on earth the old knight is doing. But Solun immediately places a firm hand on Arhan's chest, physically stopping him from stepping forward. She looks at Arhan and silently shakes her head in strict disapproval, signaling him to stand down. Mackin mocks Sir Patel, noting that a washed-up relic abandoned by his master shouldn't dare tarnish the honor of the Yellow Elephant. As a result, he, the vice captain of this knighthood, challenges Patel to an honor duel. Emanating a ferocious aura, Patel accepts. The tension in the air is suffocating as the concept of an honor duel hangs over them. It is an archaic, brutal form of combat, where warriors wager absolutely everything under the pretense of condemning those who have tarnished discipline. The winner regains their honor, elevating their prestige as a true knight. The loser, however, loses all honor completely, their severed head or broken corpse publicly displayed in the plaza. For knights who value honor far more than their own lives, it is a punishment worse than death itself, because the stakes are so absolute. An honor duel is rarely arranged, and it is almost completely unheard of between two knights with such a massive, undeniable gap in skill. It is the absolute last thing anyone expected in a situation like this. Sir Patel looks Vice Captain Macon dead in the eye and remains completely silent, his resolve locked in. From behind, Arhan finally breaks the silence, desperately asking Patel why he just did something so reckless. Arhan points out the horrifying reality. Macon undeniably possesses wings, the absolute symbol of a sword runner. Rank might not be everything in a fight, but Patel is only a swordwalker, and his body is failing so rapidly he can barely move properly. Arhan demands to know how on earth Patel plans to fight a superhuman sword runner in this state. Arhan's voice cracks with frustration. He reminds Patel of the very first conversation they had the day they became neighbors. Didn't Patel say he just wanted to spend his final moments quietly, on his own terms? This suicidal duel is the complete opposite of that peaceful end. He is wagering not just his fading life, but the very honor he spent decades building. Patel listens quietly. He warmly thanks the young master for caring about him so deeply. However, Patel gently explains that sometimes, for a true knight, there is something far more important than securing a victory or preserving honor. He looks down at his trembling hands and confesses a lifelong desire. Just once before he dies, he wants to be someone who doesn't yield to fear. He wants to stand tall before an overwhelmingly powerful enemy. Clenching his fist with renewed strength, Patel declares that he wants to be the kind of man who actively protects his neighbors. He wants to be exactly like the brave protagonist in the chivalric romance novels he cherishes. He bows his head slightly and respectfully asks Arhan to please allow him to finally achieve his dream. Hearing the raw sincerity in Patel's voice, Arhan clenches his teeth in profound frustration. He knows he cannot stop a knight who has made his final resolution. Turning away, Arhan tells Sir Patel that he is going to regret this, as the first light of the rising sun begins to break over the mountains. Sir Patel simply replies that he is sorry. The narrative jumps forward to the next day, settling inside the temporary camp of the Yellow Elephant Knighthood. Vice Captain Macon is sitting inside his command tent, meticulously cleaning his heavy broadsword. One of his subordinates, Senior Knight Ron, steps into the tent, visibly uncomfortable. He asks Macon if it was really necessary to go this far. Ron is, of course, referring to the official honor duel scheduled to take place in exactly 1 week, against an old, visibly dying knight. Vice Captain Macon pivots, asking Ron if he genuinely believes the action is excessive. Senior Knight Ron admits he does, pointing out that Patel's body is already ravaged by terminal illness. The man is essentially a walking corpse who wouldn't last a fortnight. Cornering such a broken man into an honor duel, Ron argues, will only saddle the Yellow Elephants with the shameful stigma of having oppressed the weak. Macon considers this, then asks how much Ron actually knows about Patel the Loyal. When Ron admits his ignorance, Macon reveals the truth. During their academy days, everyone mocked Patel, calling him a talentless idiot, a sword beginner, clinging to stubborn, archaic notions of honor. They predicted he would die young, yet Patel defied those odds, reaching the pinnacle of a swordwalker and surviving through sheer, foolish perseverance. Macon recounts Patel's legendary feats, emerging victorious in 17 honor duels, standing firm under bombardment to protect his lord, and defending castle gates single-handedly against a swarm of 500 starving refugees. It is precisely because of these feats that Patel is a threat. Macon explains that Patel's firm convictions are dangerous, perhaps as dangerous as the wings of a sword runner. Macon's plan is sadistic. Once the duel concludes and Patel is dead, he intends to tie the corpse to a wagon and parade it into Patel's home village. There he will announce the knight's death and publicly trample the body to utterly extinguish whatever honor Patel has left. Macon believes that by violating this man of steel, he will finally reach the breakthrough that has eluded him, the certainty of spreading his second pair of wings. He turns his sword toward Ron, demanding to know if he still thinks there is nothing to be gained from this humiliation. Back at the Karavan estate, the atmosphere is heavy with a suffocating silence. Arhan stands in his room, mentally paralyzed by the weight of the upcoming week. Liam speaks from the shadows. He reminds Arhan that Patel is guaranteed to die. He points out that while experience and walker class status count for something, the gap between a walker and a runner is absolute. There is zero mathematical chance of victory for Patel. Liam challenges Arhan, asking why he has grown so inexplicably attached to this knight. He reminds Arhan that, from the beginning, Patel was nothing more than a vessel for a sword Arhan needed to acquire. Arhan's response is raw. He admits that Patel reminds him of his father, a man who chose to fight enemies he could never defeat, defending his home until the very end. Arhan confesses his deep-seated hatred for arrogant, powerful people who trample the innocent as if it were their natural right. But what truly agonizes him is his own paralyzing weakness. He is forced to watch this situation unfold because he lacks the strength to intervene. When Liam coldly asks if he understands that by interfering, his chance to obtain the Swordwalker's sword will slip further away, Arhan finally snaps, letting out a gut-wrenching scream of frustration at his own inability to act. He tells Liam that he doesn't care about the sword or the potential for growth anymore, that what matters is something else entirely. He demands to know what kind of meaning there could possibly be in turning a blind eye to this situation, just to ensure his own brief safety. Revenge gained through the cowardice of abandonment would mean nothing to him. It would be hollow. He confesses his self-loathing, admitting how ashamed he is that he once viewed Sir Patel merely as a container for a blade he needed to claim. He rages at his own foolishness for being so consumed by his singular drive for revenge that he failed to see what he actually needed to protect. Liam slowly steps forward, his spectral form looming, and places a firm, grounding hand on Arhan's shoulder. He tells Arhan that this is the right mindset to have, the only mindset of a true warrior. He reminds Arhan that a sword is, in the end, nothing more than a piece of metal. He tells Liam that he has made his decision. The only path to protecting his neighbors and keeping his own soul intact is to fight in their place. He will challenge Makan to be the champion of the honor duel. Deep in the forest, Sir Patel is training, his movements labored, his body, ravaged by terminal illness, struggles to execute even the most basic techniques. He repeats his swings until he is gasping for air, leaning on his sword as if it's the only thing anchoring him to the world. Arhan approaches him, asking for a moment to speak. Arhan decides to trust the knight with his greatest secret, the ability to consume a person's sword and inherit the skills and memories of its owner. He explains that this power is the true source of his rapid growth, and the reason he was able to stand against Patel during their first encounter. Patel listens in silence. Though the story sounds absurd, he has witnessed Arhan's miraculous evolution firsthand, and accepts the truth. Patel correctly deduces Arhan's intention, to consume his sword, and serve as his champion in the upcoming honor duel. The narrative briefly flickers to Arhan's internal council with Liam. The ghost explains the gravity of being a champion, a warrior who fights on another's behalf, bearing the full weight of honor and the potential price of defeat. Liam notes that while Patel cannot match the vice-captain's power, the knight's lifelong experience, unshakable belief, and flawless fundamentals form a foundation that shouldn't be underestimated. It is a gamble, Liam admits, but it offers better odds than letting a dying man face a sword runner alone. Back in the forest, Arhan tells Patel that he wants to fight as his champion. He promises to inherit the sword that holds Patel's life and fight until victory is achieved, ensuring no one has to bleed. He asks Patel to entrust that blade to him. Patel pauses, touched by Arhan's kindness. However, he refuses to give an immediate answer, telling Arhan to watch. Soaluni has arrived, and Patel asks her to spar with him. Arhan and Soaluni are both stunned. Patel is in no condition to fight, and Soalun knows she cannot hold back if she draws her blade. Patel, however, stands firm, thanking Soalun for accepting his unreasonable request, and telling her not to worry about him, but about herself. Liam tells Arhan to watch closely. The light emitted when one who is at death's door burns away their life is incomparably sublime, he remarks. Soalun intends to subdue Patel in one strike, but before she can even blink, Patel is standing directly in front of her. She barely manages to block his strike, but the weight of his sword is immense. His breathing, his frail body, everything suggests he should be collapsing, yet he is moving with a strength that defies medicine. In one swift motion, Patel hurls Soalune backward. She realizes with a jolt that she was complacent. For this man, the illness has become irrelevant. This is his true, unadulterated skill. Patel presses the advantage, moving with speed and power Arhan has never seen before. Soalun finds an opening and aims for Patel's neck, coming within millimeters of a killing blow, but Patel blocks it effortlessly. Their blades collide, and the air crackles with intensity. Patel's eyes are burning with a new, terrifying light. With a final surge of force, Patel throws Soalun away, effectively defeating her in the spar. Patel thanks Soalun, telling her that he feels more alive than ever. He then turns to Arhan. He admits that Arhan's proposal is kind, and he is deeply grateful, but he cannot accept. If he stepped back, he might prolong his life a few more days, but he is not fighting merely to win. This duel, he explains, is the answer to a question he has carried his entire life. It is the final, necessary proof of his existence. The day of the honor duel arrives under a heavy, oppressive sky. Mist clings to the ground as Vice Captain Maken waits in his camp, surrounded by his knights. When a figure emerges from the gloom, Maken initially sneers, expecting the dying knight. He remarks on the man's improved complexion, mockingly asking if he found some last-minute enlightenment before his death. But as the figure approaches, Maken's smirk vanishes. It isn't Patel, it is Arhan. The boy's aura has undergone a terrifying shift. His physique is sturdy, radiating a focused intensity that reminds Maken of the legendary, vigorous Patel of his youth. Maken demands to know where the knight is. Arhan reaches for a coin strapped to his armor, a piece bearing the insignia of the green deer, and coldly states that Sir Patel will not be coming. Arhan's mind drifts back to the knight's final moments. He had found Patel in his room, the disease having finally claimed the last of his strength. Patel had confessed that his earlier resolve, the desire to die alone and bold, was nothing more than a shallow, fearful bluff. When the end actually arrived, he had been terrified and desperately lonely. He told Arhan that he was glad the young master was by his side, for in those final seconds, he was no longer alone on the path. Patel had placed a hand on Arhan's shoulder, comparing their meeting to the beauty of twilight, the light that glows just before the darkness takes hold. He told Arhan that while his own twilight was fading, Arhan was the dawn that had just begun to rise. Trusting in the truth of Arhan's secret, the knight had handed over his worn, faded sword. It was clunky and unfashionable, a relic of a life spent in service, but he asked Arhan to take it as his one final request. Patel's last words were a wish for Arhan to leave his name in the annals of history, before his kind neighbor quietly faded into the eternal dusk. Back at the camp, the reality of the tragedy hardens Arhan's resolve. Maken, hearing the news, dismisses Patel's death as a pathetic end, befitting a sick dog. He callously declares himself the winner by default, and demands that Arhan surrender Patel's corpse so he can proceed with his plan to desecrate the knight's remains and finalize his own ascension to a sword runner. Arhan stands motionless, his eyes burning with a cold, killing intent. He tells Maken that the honor duel is not over. With Sir Patel's faded sword gripped firmly in his hand, Arhan stands before the Yellow Elephant's vice captain and speaks with absolute clarity. As Sir Patel's champion, he is challenging Maken to a duel. A sword born in flames appears. Boys dream of becoming the protagonists. However, not every boy can be the protagonist. At least, he couldn't. Inside a tavern, a couple of men are playing poker while one turns around, asking what happened. The man asks a boy what his name is, asking if it's Patel, and the boy confirms that this is true. The man tells Sir Patel that he's heard this for quite a while, but he seems quite rigid for a young boy, and asks if he really is that unhappy about them playing a few cards at the night's gathering. The man tells Sir Patel that he's been making that buzzkill face all day, and Sir Patel wants to say something. He raises his gaze and waits, a little bit of sweat falling from his cheek. He says that, if he were to be bold, he'd say that their behavior here is truly inappropriate for a knight. He tells them that they're doing excessive gambling and drinking, tarnishing a knight's dignity, and using vulgar language and crude jokes, which goes against knightly ethics in many ways. He says that, as a knight, they need to be mindful, but the man tells him to shut up and says that he's always prattling on about honor. He's just wasting his breath. He then turns around towards Sir Patel and tells him that he really is a dull guy. He turns right back to the table, saying that there's no need for him to come to gatherings. That doesn't suit him anymore. In the end, he's just ruining the mood anyway. Hearing this, Sir Patel doesn't say a thing. Not long after being ostracized by his colleagues like that, a knight joined the gathering. The knight tells his seniors that what is happening is unacceptable. It was a man who shared many similarities with Sir Patel, telling the knights that drinking and singing in a public place like this, and gambling too, is not fit for a knight. He was inflexible, couldn't say things to flatter others, and was deeply engrossed in chivalry, exactly like Sir Patel was. That knight tells the others to exercise some restraint. However, the response he received from them was different, with the knights telling the junior that they thank him for pointing this out, and that they didn't think about it. The men then pulled out a chair for him, saying that it couldn't have been easy to say something like this. Unlike kids these days, he is a knight with firm convictions. The men who mocked Sir Patel earlier then say that having this much spirit is exactly why, at such a young age, he's become a sword runner. In reality, it looks like these people don't have the courage to say anything else to him. They even say that they won't show such disrespectful behavior again, so he should make sure he comes to the next gathering. All while Sir Patel is watching from the distance. He looks beaten down. These people are trying to score points with this sword runner. In reality, there was only one difference between him and that guy: talent. At first, he believed in the power of patience and effort. If he wasn't recognized, he'd work until he was recognized. He swung and swung again, and if he got stronger and stronger, he thought someday he'd be able to uphold his convictions. However, in the end, he realized it. He could never become the protagonist. He was merely a side character. Therefore, in order not to be kicked off the stage, he bowed his head to that man, telling him that he's amazing. Sir Patel had to act according to that role. He told the man that if there's anything he can help him with, he should let him know. He tells the man that menial chores or anything else is fine. The man should just give an order. He will carry it out honorably as a knight, he says. That was how Patel the Loyal was born. After that, setting half of his convictions aside, with a compromise that was closer to surrender and endless cycles of self-loathing, by the time he reached an age where it was ambiguous to call him a young man, Sir Patel became a guard for a wealthy noble family. That is the day he met the one he was sworn to protect. The girl told him that she heard from her dad that he was going to be her escort knight from now on. She turns towards Sir Patel and says that everyone was saying that if it's Patel, then he can be trusted. She says that she thinks it's really cool, a knight who never betrays and is fully devoted to his loyalty. That is the day he met Daisy, who told Sir Patel that she looks forward to working with him. She tells Sir Patel to stay by her side and protect her forever, just like the protagonist of a chivalric novel. Hearing this, Sir Patel was not sure what to say, and he was just looking down at Daisy's smiling face. There was nothing difficult about escorting her. Thanks to Daisy's uniquely friendly personality, she was always popular wherever she went, and even though she was a noble, she was a girl beloved by everyone in the territory. Handling the occasional drunk who tried to pick a fight was the extent of his duties. This was definitely far from the honorable life of a knight he had dreamed of, and his situation of being a third-rate knight who had compromised with the reality of the world hadn't changed. For some reason, when he was by her side, he felt something else. Daisy was pulling his hand, and she was smiling at him, and Sir Patel was smiling back. Those things felt like they didn't matter. He says that those were undeniably the warmest days of his life, but time passed. They were swept up in the succession struggle of the Iron Kingdom, and her family fell into ruin. After that, Daisy was no longer the beloved lady of the house but fell to being a ruined noble, and she was no longer in a position where she could casually call for him. However, she still called for Sir Patel, asking why he was still protecting their family. She says that they are now destitute, and they cannot even pay his salary, nor can they offer him a single befitting room for a night. Therefore, she asks why he is still by their side. Sir Patel thinks that he cannot become the protagonist, cannot say empty words of flattery at gatherings, and has compromised with reality to become a dog before those of higher status, because he is nothing but a faded man. Even so, he is Patel the Loyal, and he needs to take care of the one he was sworn to protect. He needs to take care of the one that needs him. Hearing this, Daisy starts crying. She thanks Sir Patel, and for Sir Patel, that was enough. Fully surrounded by a blue aura, Arhan tells his opponent that the honor duel isn't over yet. He then calls for the Knight of the Yellow Elephant Knighthood, Miken, and tells him that he's challenging him to a duel. Arhan then thinks about Sir Patel, saying that without yielding even in the face of death, the knight who protected his convictions as the champion of his lady was Sir Patel. Hearing all of this, Miken is astonished. He looks at Arhan and cannot understand what has happened to him. The presence he gives off is very similar to that of Patel's. He thinks that his excitement was about to die down, but this works out well for him. Miken says that he will gladly accept this duel. Morning arrives, and the duel is about to begin. The overseer for this duel will be Ron Thierry, adjunct of the Yellow Elephant. He tells Arhan that the rules are simple. It ends when one side surrenders, or is rendered unable to fight. Even if someone loses their life in the process, no one will be held responsible. Ron asks Arhan if he understands, and Arhan nods. Then, Miken puts forth one condition, just as Ron wants to continue stating his rules. He says that if he wins, he takes Patel's body. He will also show mercy and spare Arhan's pathetic life. However, he will cut off all his limbs and feed them to the wild beasts. He then asks Arhan if he's prepared for at least that much, and Arhan remains silent. He thanks the man for his mercy, and tells him that he will also spare his life when he wins. Instead, however, he will take both of his arms as an act of mercy. McKen laughs it off, saying that having foolish dreams is the privilege of a boy, and tells Arhan that he hopes he enjoys that pleasant dream while it lasts. Ron then tells both duelists to step back 10 paces each. The duel will begin as soon as they are in position and ready. Arhan then says that after devouring Sir Patel's sword, there was only one thing he did. He merely swung his sword until his arms felt like they would tear off, because that was the only way to understand Sir Patel's sword. His sword was different from the needle or the fang. It was utterly faithful to the basics without any tricks or deceit. It was a sword that might just seem boring and inflexible to some, but was actually so upright that it wouldn't bend even against the oncoming wind. A sword that was ultimately chosen to break instead. However, precisely because of that, it was more valuable than anything else Arhan has ever seen. The caravan master then tells Arhan that those who reach a realm above a sword runner all possess their own set of values. Pursuing those values leads directly to a rise in the realm. Thus, one with upright values advances by honing their sword, while one with destructive values gains strength by trampling over the convictions of others. Arhan realizes that this is why McKen is so obsessed with Patel. By desecrating the corpse of the one who possessed noble and unyielding convictions, he intends to use it as a sacrifice for his second wings. Liam then tells Arhan that he certainly couldn't just stand by and watch that atrocity take place, and, in that case, there was only one way for him. He must accept the entirety of Patel and become ever sturdier steel. McKen then tells Arhan that for a rookie from the sticks, his stance isn't half bad, and asks him if he received some teaching from Patel. Then he tells Arhan that there was a reason he confidently bared his fangs, that he will let him have the first move, and tells him to come at him. He tells Arhan that he will teach him the overwhelming gap in class that a frog in a well could never hope to cross. The difference, he is going to say, but then something happens that makes him swallow his words. As Arhan approaches, McKen cannot believe what he sees. It looks like Arhan has a path, which McKen didn't expect. Arhan fiercely attacks him, but McKen manages to block his sword. He cannot believe the strength Arhan possesses. He wonders what this is, as even if it's just his path alone, the difference in the realms is undeniable. He wonders how the path of a mere sword walker could be this powerful. The collision between those two is crumbling the ground beneath. Then, Arhan pushes even harder. It's clear that at this point he might be the one having the upper hand. Finally, McKen manages to deflect Arhan's sword. Not for long though, as Arhan manages to land yet another attack. Pieces of dirt are flying everywhere. Seeing this, none of the knights can believe it either. It certainly looks like McKen has fallen to the ground in the first few seconds. However, he manages to pull through. He inserts his sword into the ground and manages to stand his ground against Arhan. Then, he looks towards the boy. Blood is falling down from his mouth. Seeing this, McKen wonders what kind of disgrace this is. He wonders how that brat managed to push him back. He thinks it's impossible, or at least it shouldn't be possible for him, McKen, chosen by the heavens, to be pushed back by a mere sword walker. Arhan then tells McKen that now that their swords have clashed, he tells him that his sword is soft, comparing it to the unyieldingness of Sir Patel. McKen's sword is an absolute insult. Hearing what Arhan just said, McKen is clearly falling into a fit of fury. He clenches his sword tighter and remembers what a superior once told him, not to flatter himself just because he spread his wings a little early. A tall tower built without a sturdy foundation will collapse from a single gust of wind. The man assured McKen that if he neglected his fundamentals, he would come to resent his own negligence, saying it quite bitterly. Remembering this, McKen keeps his head lowered. He then clenches his teeth and thinks that the old man shouldn't make him laugh, as what determines the strength of a sword is not something like that. Then, a golden aura appears, engulfing everything. His golden aura wings spread out, and McKen says that the only criterion for judgment is the realm. At this point, Arhan might be overwhelmed by McKen's power. Seeing this, Liam tells Arhan that it wasn't a bad strike, and, though it was a short amount of time, it seems to have borne fruit. He tells Arhan that the needle and fang he's digested so far were closer to anomalous choices made for someone who lacked any shred of martial talent. However, that stubborn man's sword is different in a way. It's something completely commonplace, but it's a sword that was built up so steadily in the hands of its masters. That is exactly the memory Arhan needs right now. However, Liam says that that alone is not enough. The reason his preemptive strike worked just now was due to Maken's carelessness. Now that Maken has spread his wings, he can no longer hope for any more luck. Arhan then says that a sharp fighting spirit that feels as though it is carving up his entire body has washed over him, and he wonders if this is a sword runner. He thinks that he shouldn't be impatient. Even if that man has wings, he has the power of the caravan and the memories of the sword. First, he will maintain the current distance and suspect everything. Then, matching his breathing, he will lead the flow of the battle, just as he always has. Arhan prepares, but in an instant, Maken seems to have the speed to appear right behind him. Seeing this, Arhan doesn't understand what Maken did. He wonders why Maken would go behind him. Then, he notices his own blood as Maken cleans his sword of Arhan's blood. Maken tells him that he's managed to avoid being cut in two and asks him if he instinctively raised his sword to block it. He tells Arhan that he has good intuition, but he will come to resent that pathetic instinct because it has only increased the pain he will suffer. As he tries to rise up, Liam stands before Arhan. He looks at Maken's wings and says that those are a sword runner's wings. Just as the name implies, it allows them to sprint as if they are gliding through everything. That power accelerates the user's body and mind, granting them movements that transcend human perception. A sword runner with their wings spread cannot be caught even by the wind, leaving only ghost-like shadows behind them. That is exactly what makes them the ghosts of the battlefield. That is a sword runner. Liam asks Arhan if he has become complacent, intoxicated by a past victory. He tells him to get a grip, calling him foolish. Liam tells Arhan that there is only one reason he is alive right now, and it's thanks to the fact that Maken is a half-wit with only one pair of wings. There is only one way for him to win this. Arhan must break those wings of Maken's. However, Arhan thinks that he couldn't even see an afterimage. It is incomparably faster than even the movements of the superhuman Sir Patel or Sir Lewin. He needs to think of a method. Maken then tells Arhan that he admits it. His sword is sturdy enough to make it quite understandable why he dared to volunteer for an honor duel. However, such things are meaningless before the realm. He then calls Arhan a foolish boy, telling him to throw away his sword, bow his head, and apologize for his stupidity. Then, he will show him his generous mercy and let him live out the rest of his life intact. He just has to hand over Patel's corpse and live quietly. Menacingly standing before Arhan, Maken tells him that at this point Arhan has done everything that he could. While this is happening, Ron looks at the scene and wonders why the young man is hesitating. As it was a duel, he had no chance of winning from the start. That fact has finally been proven. Preserving his life before the vice captain changes his mind is the wise course of action, he thinks. However, he cannot understand why Arhan is getting up, still holding his sword tight. A memory of Sir Patel is then shown. The girl he was sworn to protect clings to his cape and asks him not to go. She tells Sir Patel that the opponent is a young master of a baronial family, and every single one of his escorts is a skilled swordsman. She tells Sir Patel that he is one of the precious few people she has left, and she doesn't want to lose him too. Sir Patel thinks that she was hurt at the party she attended to maintain her ties with high society. Even after her family's downfall, she was humiliated simply because she was a fallen noble. Just as she said, it was a situation where he was bound to die from needless bravado, but he couldn't let that happen. Sir Patel takes her hand and tells her not to worry, as he will be right back. Sir Patel only thought of one thing more than his life, more than his honor. He presents himself before the man that beat the woman he was sworn to protect, saying that he is the knight of Lady Daisy Crossell of Crossell County, Patel the Loyal. He then challenges that man to an honor duel to protect what is most precious to him. As Arhan rises from the dust, all the knights present cannot believe it. Arhan tells Maken that he does not need mercy from the likes of him, and tells him to bring it on, calling Maken a half-wit and saying that this was his first honor duel. Seeing this, none of the knights can believe what Arhan just said. Maken is clearly furious about that remark. He lets his head down and calls Arhan a bastard. With a killer instinct in his eyes, he tells Arhan that he will make him beg to be killed. Then, they stand face to face, prepared for a new duel. Arhan says that Maken has retracted his wings and switched back to superhumanization. This is a declaration that he will trample over his conviction without pity or carelessness and exert maximum violence. Then within a second, Maken is just an instant away from killing Arhan. However, Arhan manages to block it. The strike throws Arhan back quite a lot, and then, In an instant, Maken flies behind him. He tries to cut Arhan from the back. However, Arhan notices it. A big explosion follows, engulfing everything around and crumbling the ground beneath them. It looks like Arhan has managed to block it, as Maken says that it would be a problem if he couldn't endure at least that, because his execution has only begun. Maken says that from now on, Arhan's body and conviction will slowly be crushed, and he will make him realize it, the overwhelming despair that will follow. He tells Arhan to prepare. However, he doesn't get a chance to finish his sentence as Arhan tries to attack him. Arhan tells Maken that this is exactly what he was hoping for. Then, a series of blows follows, with Maken attacking with all his might, and Arhan managing to block every single one of them. It's a fierce fight, and Arhan seems to get cut more than once. However, he is not trembling before this. Maken then realizes that the look in Arhan's eyes is not a normal one. He can't see fear in those eyes. He then grabs Arhan by his hair and tries to pin him down. Arhan is now kneeling before Maken. He tries to get up, but the pain is probably unbearable. Maken tells Arhan that just because his sword is a little sturdy, he had the gall to look down on a sword runner. He tells Arhan that he's a dime a dozen, a mere walker who gets trampled upon, unable to even dodge his kicks. He shouldn't dare to look at him, who is unrivaled. He is the chosen one. He tells Arhan that he just irritates him more and more, parading around those damn relics of the past, like knightly standards and convictions. All the knights cannot even watch what happens. He tells Arhan that that stale attitude of his, trying to deny his talent, is what keeps him low. Then, once again, Arhan raises his eyes with that same look and doesn't falter when looking at Maken. Maken attacks him again, saying that Arhan reminds him of that old man. A memory of Patel's will is shown, saying that he had no thoughts of winning that honor duel. Arhan and Maken's swords clash once again. It's just like that one time when Patel was fighting his opponent. Even though he was not expecting to win, it wasn't a fight to win. It was a fight to never lose. Even if he died, it was a duel for her sake. After clashing their swords, both of them step back just a pace, trying to withstand each other's power. Then, their swords clash again and sparks follow. These two right now seem to be on even footing. Maken calls Arhan an insignificant worm, asking if he's struggling without knowing his place. He asks him how he dares to do that. Then, a barrage of hits follows towards Arhan. Seeing this, Liam says that it's not a mere fluke. In a duel between a sword runner and a walker, there is no room for flukes to exist between them. What his young descendant simply needed was a trial to further forge himself. Right now, Arhan seems to be more powerful, and Maken is simply too careless. Arhan manages to cut Maken's face. Seeing this, Maken gets even more annoyed. He spreads his wings again and calls Arhan a lowly bastard. He then throws him high into the air using his power. He then uses his wings to leap after him, saying that playtime's over. He's going to kill Arhan right then and there. Arhan, however, says that as he carries Daisy's honor, he will not lose, and even if he dies, he will never lose. He then prepares his sword with all the power he has in him. He prepares one last strike. He's about to crush Maken. Seeing this, Maken wonders, what is that? An explosion with blue flames engulfs everything. Next, it looks like Patel's memory is shown again, and he achieved victory in his first honor duel. Perhaps he had sensed it from that moment on. So long as she was a fallen noble scorned by aristocratic society, this was not the end, but only the beginning. Still, nothing would change. If anyone dared to sully her honor and bring shame upon her, Patel would challenge them to an honor duel, and every time, he would win. He would also make demands, and one of those demands was that, for the insolence one of the men showed to his lady, he must kneel and beg for forgiveness. Patel would simply protect Daisy with his life. Patel wished that Daisy could have been a little more cunning and a little more selfish, but she wasn't. Instead, she always asked Patel to leave her. She told Patel that his contract with her family ended long ago, and now that he's a knight, he will be respected everywhere he goes. Therefore, she begs him not to die at her side and to live a life of his own. Unfortunately, Patel says that Daisy could never have become something like that, and he couldn't just grant her the request she wished for. Instead, Patel just smiled as he looked at Daisy. Before long, the world pushed her into an even deeper tragedy, a conflict that broke out among the princes of the Iron Kingdom, the War of Succession. Swept up in that raging current, Daisy's father and brothers were all slaughtered, and her mother, after being taken prisoner, ultimately took her own life. In the end, She became her family's sole survivor, and its head in name only. Clad in armor that didn't even fit, she was conscripted to the battlefield. Daisy cries, saying that she is going to die and that she is not fit for something like this. She then turns towards Sir Patel and screams at him, crying, telling him to escape because he at least has a chance, unlike her, and has no duty to die there. However, Patel shouts back at her. He screams at her, telling her to get a grip, as in this place, this is the only thing that matters. Patel then tells her that he will never leave her side. He then says that this Patel, the loyal, will protect her without fail, just as raging fire approaches them. Flaming arrows cover the sky, and the horrific battlefield, where the bombardment of mages rains down without end, comes into view. However, for Patel, that doesn't matter. Even now, he's protecting Daisy, because his role will not change. Soldiers approach them, trying to kill them, but once again, Patel does his best. He cuts them down, and cuts them down again and again and again, until none are left, until no one could touch or harm Daisy. By the end, even she had become part of the battlefield. As the sun rises, thousands of blades stain the ground with blood, and Patel carries Daisy out. They survive in the end. After the war ends, her achievements are recognized, and she is granted a countess title along with the territory. Now, only one task remains for her. After a demon-like famine made bottomless by years of war, she has to endure the fury of the people of her territory, who had lost their families and homes. Even then, Patel is simply grateful that this riot has broken out while she happens to be away from the territory. Taking all of their anger on his own is nothing to him. Even though they are throwing rocks and trying to enter the castle, Patel stands there and simply waits for them to finish. He is covered in blood, and he can barely see anymore as Daisy runs towards him. Two noblemen try to stop her, but she doesn't care. Daisy simply throws herself into Patel's arms as he stands there, broken from catching all those stones. Daisy cries into his chest. Even then, Patel tells her not to do so, and that he is so very glad to have been her knight. Back in the present, it looks like that explosion left McKen on his knees. He then realizes what that dizziness of his is. It's mana shock, he says, and then he starts bleeding from his mouth. He looks down at the blood flowing on the ground, saying this is impossible, as this phenomenon only occurs when one clashes with an overwhelmingly strong opponent without mana mastery honed to the absolute limit. Then, Miken looks towards Arhan and says that it cannot be possible for a mere greenhorn like him to reach such a realm. It makes no sense to him at all. Arhan is covered in that blue mana. Miken says that Arhan must have made a deal with a witch of the Sky Empire to receive a magic tool from those wicked creatures. Otherwise, there is no way to explain this, he says. Using sorcery in a dishonorable way between knights is considered cowardly. Miken says that wings were too good for the likes of Arhan from the start, and now he will lower himself to his level. Arhan, however, only stands there looking at the broken man in front of him. In this Iron Kingdom, there may be many who have remained a swordwalker longer than he has, but, with lingering attachments he couldn't cast aside, useless stubbornness, the foolishness of refusing to accept reality, and an inferiority complex towards talent he never possessed. No swordsman has clung as miserably as he has to the very end of the walker's path. That is why Arhan is now certain, if it's a fight against another walker, he will never be defeated. Thank you for watching. See you next time.